Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Boom Comic Source collaboration. It's your DC Spotlight for October 1st, 2025. New York Comic Con right around the corner. Still don't know if I'm going. It's a week away from when this comes out. But yeah, I've got some stuff for sale. Hopefully things can, I've given myself a deadline this week. If anybody wants to contribute, the QR code is on the screen. Just need a little more help. Try to get there. So we'll see. Expecting a lot of big announcements there, so hopefully I'll be there to cover those. I really like covering the panels live at the big shows, DC panels, the Energon panels and whatnot. A lot of people, don't get to go to those kind of things, and you hear the news, later, but it's not the same as hearing it in the moment and what have you. You feel like you're a little more a part of it. So hopefully I'll be able to go. I'll be, like I said, if I do go, I'll be live tweeting those panels. The good thing is, and part of the reason, because again, I've literally had like one donation. But the good thing is I actually now need to go to New York for a work trip. So what that means is instead of having to use miles, I was going to use miles because I couldn't afford the plane ticket, but now I don't even have to use my miles. My work is going to pay for my plane ticket. So I'm flying out. If I go, I'll fly out on the 8th and I won't come back till the 17th. If I don't get to go to the show, then I'll fly out on the 12th, which is the same day the show ends. I'll fly out on the 12th and stay through the 17th just for work. But I can go out on the 8th and go early. The help I need is to pay for my hotel room if I go to the show. Which, it would be Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. And now I can get my work to pay for Sunday night now. So that's another good thing. So still 4 nights of a hotel in New York City is, as you can imagine, not cheap. So anyway, QR code up on the screen or in the show notes. Again, anything you want to donate helps. Really appreciate it. But yeah, a lot of news about to come out. There's rumors of a Superman Spider-Man crossover coming next year that may be announced. There's rumors of Ram V doing a Vertigo title. I mean, it was last year at New York Comic Con that DC announced Vertigo was coming back. The Nice House books being the ones that shifted over from Black Label to now having the Vertigo trade dress. But we haven't had anything new, and we haven't had any Nice House issues come out because it's on hiatus. So yeah, interesting to see what DC is going to do to get Vertigo back up and running. And also DC is going to have a booth. And they said they're going to have a booth on the floor. I don't know if that's actually on the show floor. So for those that don't know, DC hasn't been at New York Comic Con since 2018, I think was the last year. They didn't even do it the last year before the pandemic. But they weren't even on the floor. They were kind of off in this other area all to their own, which was fine. But you had to go out of your way to get to it. And it just didn't have the same energy when it's not on the floor. So we'll see. We'll see if it's going to be on the floor or not. Again, if I get to go. So anyway, pretty big week this week. 13 books to talk about. I thought it was maybe not quite as strong of a week as I thought. Again, partly because I'm going to be out of town regardless, whether I get to go to the show or I'm just going to New York for work. I'm going to be gone, and so Rocky and I are going to have to figure out how we're going to get these issues recorded for you guys, and so we don't miss. And so with that in mind, this last weekend I was reading ahead a little bit, and I read some of the titles for next week, DC titles for next week, and then I went to do my rankings, and I was super excited. I was like, oh, I can't wait I think this book's going to be my number one. It was so good. I haven't been ranking that particular series that high recently. People will be excited that I'm back on board. And then I realized, oh wait, that book comes out next week. Damn it. So, I had a little bit of a harder time because nothing really blew me away. So I say all that to say next week we got some bangers, right? Which next week they'll be coming out on the 8th, which is, the same day that the show is about to kick. I mean, it's retailer day at New York Comic Con. The show itself opens to the general public on the following day, the Thursday the night. So anyway, before we get into the books, and before we get Rocky's thoughts on the week overall, let's do one of these packs. So, these are the Fleer Brilliant Superman packs that I got at San Diego Comic Con. They've been opening, starting it off with Cat Grant there. Next up, we have a Superboy, Connell.
Nice.
Yeah. Wearing his nice 90s jacket there. Then we have somewhat of some sort of an insert card. The Lex Luthor.
Nice. Okay.
Lex Luthor Revenge Squad. And then we have another insert, Illuminators Parasite. Oh, it's I don't know how well that's going to show up on the screen, but it's like 3D, like those lenticular covers that DC did a while back.
Yeah. So Illuminators, is that the name of the team? Is that the name of the team, or is that just the name of the cards?
Yeah, I think that's just the name of the style of card.
Oh, okay.
And then finally we finish it off with a Granny Goodness. Which nice. I always thought if Granny Goodness ever comes to the DC movies, she should be played by Kathy Bates. I think Kathy Bates kind of looks like Granny Goodness. So I'm also going to open one of these fig pins because, like I said, might be going to the show, and if I do, I might want to wear this on my lanyard if I can get it open. Of course, it doesn't want to open. While I'm getting this open, Rocky, why don't you give us your thoughts on this? How'd you feel about the DC week overall?
I was it was really easy for me to pick my top 5 this week. I thought there was out of the 13 titles, there's actually 14 titles if you include Teen Titans Go, but out of the 13 titles, I thought it was easy for me to choose my top 5. I thought it was kind of meh. It was fairly meh across the board a little bit. But the top 5, I really enjoyed the top 5. And so again, oh, that looks nice. Oh, what is that? That's not a card, is it?
It's like Spark. No, this is one of those fig pins. So it's the combo between enamel pins, which are super mini figs like Legos. And so they're all Superman. I think I've showed the back of the box before. So they're all different versions of Superman. And this particular one, it's like glitter. It's like super sparkly.
Nice.
So anyway, so you were saying it was easy to pick your top?
Yeah, it was easy. I thought the absolute titles continued to with the exception I really enjoyed the Absolute Universe. I still got mixed feelings with Absolute Green Lantern. I'm still struggling with that a bit. But overall, I'm pretty damn happy. And I just really love the ongoing saga with Doomsday going into and Superman and Booster Gold and the Dark Legion going into DCKO, which is next week premiering. It's there's such a wave of excitement. I actually have I've got the DC round robin. I blew it up on my printer at work, and so I got the round robin thing right in front of him, right below my computer screen. I'm staring right at it. I've been staring at it for the last 4 weeks or 3 weeks since we did our DCKO sort of breakdown there with Steve when Steve joined us. And I don't know, I'm really enjoying it right now. I gotta say, the indie titles I've been reading have really been suffering because I've just been a DC fanatic since I got back from San Diego, and I haven't really looked back, to be honest.
It's funny that you bring up the Absolute titles. So we got called out a little bit for last week for Absolute Wonder Woman because we didn't mention that we got the Absolute version of Zatanna showing up for the first time. And I blamed it all on Rocky. I still blame it's complete because I didn't talk about that title in detail at all because there was a lot of books last week. And so I was trying to keep it short and sweet. That being said, I'm tongue in cheek when I say I'm blaming it on Rocky because even though I was trying to keep my comments on Absolute Wonder Woman very brief, I still should have mentioned it. It's so important. Anytime a new, an absolute version of a character, especially somebody as long standing and a fan favorite like Zatanna, I definitely should have mentioned it. I'm kind of surprised Rocky didn't. And it's funny
because I straight up I don't. There was Absolute Zatanna. I never saw that in Absolute Wonder Woman number 12. Where was she?
So the person in the comments
that.
And we were talking about this, you, me, and Steve in our group text, that a lot of people were reading Absolute Wonder Woman and they got to the title page and they stopped reading. There's 2 pages after the title page in Absolute Wonder Woman. The final page of Absolute Wonder Woman number 12 is a full page spread, a full page splash that shows Absolute Zatanna. So, yes.
You mean in a comic book?
in Absolute Wonder Woman, the comic book that we reviewed last week that I did not talk about in detail because it was not in my top 5.
Really?
In that book, Absolute Zatanna shows up on the last page. There are more pages after the credits, after the splash page that gives the credits. So that was this person's point, that a lot of people just stopped reading it once they got to that. Oh, here's the credits. I guess it's over. Which, by the way, everybody, you should never do that, right? We know they put the credits page when they put it. Like when I was going through for this week's books, like there's like several of the books that don't have any credits page, which is super annoying. I mean, obviously when it goes to print, they're going to be in there, but we're getting, not final copies, and it's just annoying that the credits are not there. But yes, on the last page of last week, Absolute Wonder Woman 12, we get the absolute version of Zatanna. So that explains it, everybody, why Rocky did not mention it, because he did not see it. I did not mention it, to my discredit, because talk about Absolute Wonder Woman in detail. But even though I didn't talk about Absolute Wonder Woman in detail, I should have brought it up because it's important when we're getting a new version of an absolute character. Plus, the other thing is typically even though I'm not necessarily talking about a book because it's not in my top 5, I typically listen to what Rocky says. But there are times when, he's doing something and I'm, it takes a lot. There's a lot of moving parts in the background of the show is what I'm getting at. So I didn't pay as much attention to his review of Absolute Wonder Woman as I should have. So I didn't even realize that he hadn't mentioned it until that person in the comments is like, I can't believe you didn't mention, and the person in the comments didn't want to spoil it. They're like, I can't believe you didn't mention that a new character showed up. I don't want to spoil it. And I was like, oh, you're right. We did forget to mention it. And so, for that reason, I thought that Rocky just forgot about it because I forgot about it. But it turns out, as you all heard, that he didn't even know that this character showed up. And again, it's a significant amount of story. I think I said it's 2 pages. It's actually more than that because we get Veronica Cale talking to Dr. Poison for a couple of pages or 1 page, I guess. And then Cale's talking to her assistant, which is Etta Candy in this version. And then we get a double page splash of Cale walking through what looks like, a prison with a bunch of, I think it might be Giganta. There's some like female looking Killer Croc alligator. And then we get the scene of Zatanna. So it's a significant amount of story that happens after the credit page. So especially important for us because we're reading digitally. Hey man, just because it's the last page doesn't mean you should stop scrolling.
Yeah, I honestly never read that. I'll have to go back and read the whole thing. I never even caught that. I had no idea that was in there. In fact, I thought there was an allusion to another. I thought it was another character, and I'm sorry, I can't remember. I even answered the guy in the chat, and I thought he was referring to another character in Absolute Wonder Woman.
There wasn't. I mean, there's not another character that shows up that's like you were talking about the Trident, but there's not another character that shows up in the book that's in the main universe that's given a first appearance,
right?
Unless you want to talk. I mean, Hippolyta shows up for the first time in that issue, but it's not. I mean, that's not. I don't feel like that's significant because she just shows up. She doesn't really do anything. It's not like it's not implied that she's going to have a role going forward, other than she shouts out, "Oh, my daughter's still alive," so she makes a first appearance. So maybe you thought that's what it was, but obviously this is Zatanna. Is a big deal. And again, we were talking maybe, now that I'm thinking about it, like I mentioned, we were talking about it because in Absolute Batman next week, everybody, there is a first appearance of a very major character that's getting their absolute version for the first time. So we were talking about that in our group text. And I said, yeah, also this other person shows up in Wonder Woman. And you were like, yeah, I've never really been a big fan. And I always thought you were a fan of Zatanna. So that's why I was confused.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about Hippolyta. I never. I even got.
Why would I care about Hippolyta? That's so. Yeah, so
that's why I. Yeah,
Yeah, you were like, yeah, I've never been a big fan. I was like, who is? I mean,
yeah, yeah.
Hippolyta is not a. She's a supporting character. She's a minor character in my mind. And I get that she's been Wonder Woman herself at times, but she's a
Yeah.
minor character. I would never make a big deal about Hippolyta showing up. Again, that's why I was surprised that you didn't care that Zatanna, the absolute version of Zatanna, showed up.
Oh,
So,
I think that's awesome. I'm glad. I'm looking forward to going and reading the. That's the thing that sucks about these digital copies. Because I've missed full a lot of on the deceased titles. They'd have like backup stories that I completely missed because I think it's the end of the digital thing and there's no. I can't
keep
tell if
scrolling,
there's
man.
more pages.
Just
Yeah,
keep scrolling until you can't scroll anymore. It'll stop.
exactly.
It'll
But
stop
I
on
need a
its own.
code, by the way.
I sent you two.
Okay, sorry.
You two. 345-775-820188. It's got to be one of those because I got both of those.
Man.
So anyway, yeah, that explains it all. You heard it here live,
Yeah.
everybody. Rocky did not know about Absolute Zatanna, so I blame him. I blame myself. I blame him for not reading it. I blame myself for not noticing that he didn't notice. So anyway,
Yeah.
all right. So that's enough about last week's books. Let's go ahead and dive into this week. Again, apologies everybody, but Zatanna does show up in Absolute Wonder Woman 12 from last week. More to come when the next issue of Absolute Wonder Woman comes out. But we're kicking this week off with Batman #2 from writer Matt Fraction, Jorge Jimenez on art, Tameya Morey on colors, Clayton Cowell with Jorge Jimenez on letters. For me, this one came in. It's in my top 5. It's not in Rocky's top 5. And it's so interesting where we're at with Batman. You know, I mentioned some possible, DC news that's coming out. There's rumors of a couple more Batman titles. And I'm like, God, how many more Batman titles can we have? Because right now we have 2 ongoing regular Batman issues or series because Batman Hush, which has been delayed, supposedly Jim Lee just this last weekend finished the pencils for the next issue. So I can't imagine how the following issue after that is not going to be late. I think by the end of next year, by the end of 2026, we will get the end of the last volume of Batman. This volume of Batman will be, I'm going to say, on issue 9 or 10 before the previous volume ends, which it's just ridiculous and inexcusable and stupid. And I've talked about how just what a debacle it is, and it's lost all momentum. There was already problems with Hush too, and now this. So anyway, I like that we have an ongoing Batman title with creators that can get stuff done on time, and I like where it's going, and I like the art from Jorge Jimenez. I just like everything about it. Does that mean that we need more Batman titles? No, we don't need more Batman titles. I don't know. I guess we'll find out next week if there's more Batman titles when the news comes out from New York Comic Con. But regardless, at the end of the first issue of Matt Fraction's Batman run, we saw Robin get shot, and that's where this one picks up. Well, first we see kind of I guess I don't want to say a reenactment, but we get a bit of a flashback. We're told it's in the past. We see Damian, we see Tim Drake, we see Bruce Wayne, we see Alfred. They're out in front of Wayne Manor. They're washing cars. It's a little bit of exploring their relationships and giving more of a lighthearted feel to the Bat family that Matt Fraction has talked about wanting to bring to Batman, the title overall. So I appreciate that. And then we get into kind of what happened, how right. So we're going back in time a little bit, and then we see Robin get shot. So we catch up to where we were at the end of last issue, and then once he's shot, he's thrown in the back of a paddy wagon. Now these police officers, their characters you're going to love to hate. Supposedly protect and serve, right? Like that's the creed or the motto of police departments here in the United States. But these guys are not good cops. They're very fascist tendencies, which makes sense considering who's leading the GCPD right now. Vandal Savage. So they're not treating the prisoners the way they should be treated. And unfortunately, this sort of stuff has happened and been documented in the U.S., where they throw prisoners in the back of these paddy wagons and then they drive purposely, very recklessly. So the people are kind of thrown around and injured, and people have died being transported. Prisoners have died, or I shouldn't say prisoners, they're alleged criminals, right? Because they haven't even actually been charged yet. They've just been arrested and they're taking them to jail. Eventually they'll get their day in court, but they don't even make it there because these police officers have bad intentions. And as I mentioned, they drive these vehicles in such a way that the person that's in the back, whose hands are handcuffed together, and so they can't bring their hands up to protect themselves from being thrown all around the inside of this. And like I said, they've died from their injuries. So that's what these police officers attempt to do. Batman shows up. He uses a spike strip to stop them, to stop the vehicle, but it doesn't stop them. They're ready to kill Batman and Robin, and in fact, they try to. One of them is a little less on the edge, a little less toward the bad side of things, if you will, and he actually realizes that his partner's stepping over the line. He tries to stop his partner. His partner shoots him. We got cops shooting cops here, and of course, Vandal Savage blames it on Batman and Robin. And excuse me, and that's where the issue ends, with Vandal Savage basically saying that Batman and Robin are enemies of the GCPD, shoot them on sight and what have you. And it's unfortunate that this sort of thing has such a sense of realism in this country right now. And Matt Fraction's not a writer that shies away from bringing kind of real world politics into his books. That's definitely what we have here with this fascist tendencies for the Gotham City Police Department to be exhibiting, which again, it all comes from the top down, right? So if Amanda Waller is truly off the page, and I don't know when she's going to show up next, and I hope it's at least till the end of next year at the earliest. I'd like it to be even longer, but I realize that she's a character that DC likes to go back to time and time again. But while she's gone, I feel like Vandal Savage is stepping up to kind of fill that void of a character that's just has no redeeming qualities. You just love to hate, absolutely despicable, just vile. And again, the thing that makes it that much worse is the fact that it's reflecting reality, and not just in this country, political reality in this country, but political realities in other countries as well, with the global rise of nationalism and fascist tendencies that we've seen over the last 5 to 10 years. And Vandal Savage is definitely an allegory for that. So it's interesting because, again, Matt Fraction talking about wanting to lighten Batman up, lighten Gotham City up, take it away from being kind of dark and gloomy and grim and gritty all the time. But in a way, he's bringing it down to an even lower level rather than lightening it, because he's bringing in kind of real world societal issues, which is interesting. But again, it's heavy stuff. But he's a fantastic writer. He's super talented, and you don't have to explore that part of the story if you don't want to. You could just take this on the surface and just, hey, Vandal Savage is technically a supervillain. He has superpowers. He's going up against Batman and Robin. They're heroes, superheroes, even though they don't necessarily have power. So it's superheroes versus supervillains. If you want it on that level, it's there and it works on that level. If you want to, think about the deeper meanings and the political machinations, that's there as well. But you add in the Jorge Jimenez art, which is interesting also, because there is a difference that I've noticed. I noticed it the first issue, but I didn't necessarily comment on it because I wanted to be sure. And now that we've got 2 issues in the can, I will say that, thinking back to Jorge Jimenez's work on Batman when Tynion was on the title, the Joker War, it was a little bit more gritty. The line work wasn't as clean. It was a little more textured, which again, if you're telling a darker, more shadowy Batman story in a darker, more shadowy Gotham, you're going to want that style of art. I love that it's a cleaner style. It harkens back more to Jorge Jimenez's work on Super Sons, where I first became aware of his work. And so when you add that in, it kind of elevates and cleans it up and lightens the mood as well. But his art is really working quite well in the first couple issues. So I really enjoyed it. I was actually surprised, Rocky, that this wasn't in your top 5.
Actually, the reason why I wasn't in my top five is that I was actually disappointed with his focus on the police officers as being so just unbelievably fascist as they are. If it's one thing that, first of all, speaking as a Canadian, and I know that politics and comics we touch upon it once in a while. It's somewhat of a it can get messy when various reviewers and people we talk about politics and comics. It can be a hotbed topic, but as a Canadian, my perception when watch news on YouTube is that you're having a lot of problems with ICE, your immigration officials wearing masks and everything else. So my outside observation, because I don't see it day to day living in Canada, is that the big problem in the U.S. is ICE officials. Maybe I'm wrong about that, and certainly those of you who live in America,
ICE is a problem, but it's not. There's credible evidence that a lot of the police departments here in the United States have white nationalist members as members of the police department. Okay. So it's not just limited to ICE.
Well, I would just
there've been a lot of officers from local police departments that have moved on to ICE. That they want the federal. I can have even more authority. So it's a problem with all law enforcement in this country, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess at the end of the day, Matt Fraction, in interviews, he was talking about this new Gotham. Visually, Gotham actually looks like it's a brighter city, maybe a slightly better looking city, and that it looks like it just visually it looks better. Jorge Jimenez's art it really pops off the page, and I think I just felt it felt a little bit cliche. I mean, yes, another more corrupt cops in Gotham. I get it, and it is under pardon me, Vandal Savage, and I get it. It's just really, are there any good cops in Gotham at all? It would literally be something different if we have a Batman comic that doesn't have a corrupt. All of them are garbage cops. All of them. It just feels this whole storyline seems now they're shooting Batman and Robin. So it's just going to the next level. And it's just, I guess part of me is I'm probably impacted by the negativity coming out of America politically. I am affected by the toxic political atmosphere of your country. I just am. And it's just relentless. And it feels, I think probably I'm having a visceral reaction that I'm seeing it in the comic books where for once, I agree that this possesses a verisimilitude, an uncomfortable verisimilitude reflecting the real world. I can take your word for that. At the same time, I guess I'm just not, I guess the storyline itself is something that I'm not really a big fan of. And and that's all I got to say.
Yeah. I'm not either. I just want it. I was just like, I was feeling like the same kind of feeling of despising Amanda Waller that I used to get. That's how I was feeling against Van. I was like, I just want him to go away, dude. Like, enough of this garbage, influencing your police officers to act like this. But because I get what you're saying. Yeah. Are there any good cops? They can't all be this bad, but I mean, because like you said, they're taking this to another level. That is the difference. Like, it used to be, okay, you had corrupt cops on the Gotham City Police Department. They were on the take and they'd look the other way or whatever. This is taking it, a step farther. They're, like you said, they're shooting Batman and Robin. And to that point, it gets a little ridiculous almost. So, yeah, while having them be, I don't know what the right word, like, be so anti, or just be so fascist, I guess, we keep using that word. That's the best word to use. Just having them be that fascist, while it does have some degree of verisimilitude, at the same time, it's like, could they really go that far to be shooting? But, at the same time, we don't have superheroes in real life, so who could say? Anyway, let's move on. I mean, the Batman continues to sell really well. I will say that we're as huge. It was the biggest book. So Absolute Batman was the biggest book last year. Batman #1 from Matt Fraction is the biggest book this year. I'm pretty sure it's for sure the biggest DC book. I'm not sure if anything else. That being said, even with over 500,000 orders for that book, it still is going to another printing because it's sold out. It's sold out 500,000 copies, so insane. But a lot of that might be due to the blind bag phenomenon, which I'm not a fan of. So. Anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Gotham Academy first year #1. Story by Brendan Fletcher, Becky Cloonan, and Carl Kerschel. Now, the same creative team that did the first volumes of Gotham Academy, but this time Carl Kerschel is just working on story, as opposed to he was helping with story. Like, I think when he first came on, he was just the artist and maybe helping with a little bit of plotting, and then he got credited as a co-plotter and a writer. But now it's those three returning to writing duties. It's actually scripted by Brendan Fletcher, but we have a new artist, Marco Ferrari, who's doing the art for this issue. And I thought the art was really, really strong. The colors by Eva De La Cruz, and the letters are by Steve Wands. Now, this is actually the first Gotham Academy book that I've ever read. I've read some.
Oh, really? Wow.
I've read some stories of Maps Maguchi. We've had several Maps Maguchi stories in the various anthologies that DC's done over the last few years, but I never read the first volume. I think there was 2 volumes. Or maybe it was one series that, had multiple collected editions. I'm not sure, again, because I never read any of it. So this is really my first exposure to Olive Silverlock and kind of what Gotham Academy is about. So it didn't make my top 5, but I did enjoy it. I'll say that. It came in for me at number 9. So. And I thought the art was really strong from Marco Ferrari. I didn't enjoy it so much that I'm running right out to read the first Gotham Academies. I wouldn't be opposed to going back and reading those at some point. But there's other books I'd probably rather make time for currently. But anyway, I know you did read Gotham Academy, so I'm curious your thoughts on this one, because it came in
at number 10 for me. I really enjoyed it. I probably could have ranked it higher. It just so happens right now I'm just really big on the big event at DC, leading into DCKO. But I love that this very much has a Wednesday feel, like if you're watching the series Wednesday, like the Addams Family Wednesday, and where she's sort of like Wednesday's the outcast at school. That's in fact that's that reference of Wednesday is even in the comic. Olive Silverlock is basically a poor student, because Gotham Academy is for the elites. It's for rich kids. Rich kids go there for an education. Olive Silverlock is decidedly not rich. In fact, she's put there by Bruce Wayne. She's saved by Batman, and she clearly had a traumatic event at some point in her life. And her mother is institutionalized and being fed drugs. Then she goes to visit her mother at the end and runs into Jonathan Crane, who's trying to help her mother and talks to her about her mother's being given the wrong medication. And meanwhile, she meets Maps Mazaguchi's brother, Kyle. And just a quick reference, those reading Birds of Prey, the future version of Maps Mazaguchi is in Birds of Prey. But in any event, Kyle Mazaguchi, Maps' brother, shows up here as well. Potential love interest for Olive Silverlock. In any event, it's a really good cast. It's a good, solid first issue, establishing the characters, good dialogue, crisp dialogue. You mentioned the art. I think the art does a really good job. It's not quite the same as I still prefer the original artist iteration, but it's still pretty damn good. And this series is on my pull list, because I guess I'm a completionist. I love the series. I got all of the series and on the original series, so I'm definitely getting this. So I did enjoy it, and we'll see. And I really loved the cover. I thought the cover was fantastic. The way Olive Silverlock sort of stands out on the cover. It looks really nice. Cover A, which is awesome.
Yeah, the open order cover I thought was really quite strong as well. Because that's the thing. A lot of times those open order covers, you don't really get, you get what you get and whatever. Which is interesting too, because I forgot to mention on Batman number 2, there's a cover by Jorge Jimenez, which has Batman's like grappling hook, and he's going to be doing a series of these. They're called the Gadget variants, and I know for like the one for December that's coming out is the Batmobile. So yeah, it has like the gun that he fires. It can fire like grappling hooks or gas bombs or whatever. So I thought that was really, really cool. The Gotham Academy cover, I thought the main cover was actually the best of the 3, which is interesting. So anyway, up next we have the book that leads directly into the DCKO event that we've been teasing. We've been talking about. It's Justice League, the Omega Act Special #1. So I'm glad the DC did this. So this is one of the books that doesn't have a credits page, right? So we know it's written by Joshua Williamson. We've got art by both Yasmin Putri and Cian Tormey. And Yasmin colors her own art, and I maybe colors the rest. I don't know, because it doesn't have another color artist listed. So I don't think Cian would be coloring his own. So again, I'm just not sure, and apologies if I'm missing somebody. But letters are by Dave Sharp. But my this isn't my top 5, by the way. But one of the things I want to point out is that if you didn't read Absolute Power, you didn't read the DC All-In Special, you're not really sure what's been going on with the Mark Waid event that had the time traveling Legion of Doom, We Are Tomorrow, or whatever it was called. This special, this Omega special, Omega Act special, tells you everything you need to know. And so if you have been reading everything, if you've been reading Joshua Williamson's Superman, if you've been reading Justice League Unlimited, if you've been reading World's Finest, the recent Bizarro storyline, but the We Are Tomorrow event, if you've read DC All-In Special, some of the stuff that you're told, or some of the things that you see, or some of the events that unfold in the Omega Special, are going to feel a little redundant to you. But and obviously we've been reading all that stuff. I didn't mind it as a recap, having all the information in one place, number one. And number two, I didn't mind it because I know for anybody who has missed out, like maybe you're reading Justice League Unlimited, but you haven't been reading Superman, or maybe you're reading Superman, but you haven't been reading Justice League Unlimited, or maybe you just read the All-In Special and you're just reading the Absolute stuff. And you're not aware of what's going on with Doomsday as the time trapper, and Booster Gold being a prisoner of Darkseid's Legion, and that kind of stuff. This prelude, this Omega Act special, tells you absolutely everything you need to know going into DCKO. And having already read DCKO 1, it's a pretty seamless transition. So I like that this book exists just for that fact, just for the fact that it ties everything up so well. If I had one, and I thought the art was solid as well, although I would have preferred just having one singular artist on it, because the art it's not as clean as it could be. And there is a really cool Fernando Blanco cover of Superman fighting off different members of the Legion, which you can see over my head if you're watching on YouTube. But I didn't think any of the other covers really stood out for me. Even the incentive cover with Booster Gold, I didn't think was particularly good. And I really thought the main cover, the main cover for me was like the worst one. It just felt so like muddy and
it's ugly. The color work is awful with the green and it's just putrid. Yeah. It's just awful, really bad.
Yeah, I didn't care for that main cover at all. And it's Jorge Fornes art, and I love Jorge Fornes.
Yeah, it was terrible.
I think you're right. I think it's the colors that just made it look bad. So, but anyway, I did enjoy this. There's not a lot to say about it in terms of, plot wise. I'm not going to get into it because, again, if you've been reading everything that's been happening in DC, again, this is nothing that's happening here is really going to surprise, but it's all laid out. It's all laid out. This is why DCKO is happening. This leads directly into DCKO. So I would say, if you're planning on reading the DCKO event, if you're planning on picking up DCKO number 1, and there's any part of what's been going on that you're not sure about, or if you just want a refresher, definitely pick up Omega Act. Maybe you don't want to pick up the main cover. Maybe you pick up one of the other open order variants. But anyway, this was in my top 5, as I mentioned. In your top 5 as well, Rocky, what'd you think?
Yeah, I was in my top 3, and there is one potential major revelation here, although it's not necessarily significant from a plot perspective, but it's very interesting to note that I love the fact that we get a flashback to Krypton in the many years before it exploded, where a young Laura and Ursa, it's revealed that Laura, of Jor-El and Laura, Superman's Kal-El's mother, her school, I guess you could say her friend when she was younger, was actually Ursa, who would go on to marry General Zod. And they actually end up exploring an ancient part of Krypton and stumbling upon a prophecy in the deepest cavern of one of the deepest caverns of Krypton that basically alludes to what is going to be a future champion, that somebody that sort of saves the universe, and you think that they're ultimately referring to you think that they're maybe initially referring to Superman, but they're not. They're referring to Doomsday himself, and being the one that will actually save, potentially be a weapon used against Darkseid himself. And Doomsday knows that Doomsday himself is part of that prophecy. And as Doomsday says, Doomsday sees himself as somebody. He was manufactured on Krypton to defeat Darkseid. He was born to be a weapon, but now he sees himself that he's a weapon that must be armed by another. And who is that? And who's going to arm? So that's very, very interesting. So all this time, we thought that Doomsday was just sort of this genetic freak that kept being born and reborn to ultimately became a destructive force that killed Superman. But in fact, the origins of Doomsday were so much more significant than that. He was the reason why the people that created Doomsday in the first place was they were creating him to be a weapon that would ultimately be used for a prophesized event, and this event is potentially this event with fighting Darkseid. So that's pretty cool, and the fact that it's discovered by Ursa and Laura, I thought that was a really nice callback what they did there. And again, I really love every time I see the Dark Legion, I love seeing them in battle. I love seeing Superman, Booster Gold, Flash here, the way that he utilizes his abilities traveling through time to sort of help Doomsday, and who shows Booster Gold the future that is hopeless, and that's such a nice and clever way to sort of retell the tale, like you said, Jace, of getting readers up to speed, sort of reminding us of not only the important plot points, but then dropping a nice little kind of cool truth bomb about the significance of Doomsday himself, who would go on to be the Time Trapper. He's more significant than we realize, and how will that tie in to DCKO as well? So it's really cool, and it easily made my top 3, notwithstanding probably the ugliest cover this week. But okay, I think Jace is frozen. I don't know. He's frozen. I don't know if I'm not sure why he's frozen, but he's going to come back on here.
Yeah, I'm back, guys. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties, magic of the internet. Rocky, did you read it? I think it came out in 94. After Death of Superman, it was prestige format. They were square bound. There were 3 issues. It was called Doomsday Hunter Prey. It was by Dan
I have. Oh yes, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, because you when you were talking about cool to see Supergirl and Ursa, discover that So
I mean Laura. I said Laura, like
Laura, who will become Supergirl, and Ursa. Discover. I never thought it was Superman that they were talking about. I always knew it was Doomsday, because if you recall, and maybe you don't, because it's again 1994, that's over 30 years now, which is
right.
That's a whole nother thing. But in that story, they tell the origin of Doomsday, and we find out that Doomsday wasn't a Kryptonian infant, that this Kryptonian mad scientist, for lack of a better term, Bretian or whatever his name was, he exposed this infant to death time and time again, and evolved it, and that's the one that became Doomsday. So this is a new information coming at, like, Doomsday was always created as an ultimate weapon. Now, the new part is that, and he was even called the Ultimate back then in Kryptonian. The new part is that, and what was not in Hunter Prey, because the idea didn't exist at the time, was that it was created to stop Darkseid. It was was kind of framed, if I remember correctly, again 30 years ago. This guy was doing it just to see if he could, and to have it as kind of an ultimate weapon for Krypton to defend itself if the need ever arose. But yeah, the fact that now we're finding out, or they're intimating that, maybe it was always to defeat Darkseid. So I just wanted to throw that out there. This isn't the first time we're hearing that Doomsday was created on Krypton, everybody. That's been in canon for a long time, which is an interesting idea. There were people, when it came out, I remember when Hunter Prey came out, there were people that didn't like it. They're like, Doomsday's origin should have stayed a mystery, and the fact that he's a Kryptonian construct, and he was able to defeat it, kind of, in some people's mind, it lessened the Legacy of Krypton, which in my mind, like at that time, we still had the John Byrne Legacy of Krypton, with everybody being cold and unthinking and unfeeling. So I didn't really feel like it did. And it also made more sense that Doomsday would be so powerful if he did have Kryptonian origins. You know, he's that much further ahead of the game in terms of power if he's absorbing solar radiation or whatever. But anyway, I bring it up in case you want to learn more about Doomsday's origin. You can get those issues very inexpensive. You probably go on eBay and get all 3 issues for less than $10. They weren't super popular, but they're really great, and great Dan Jurgens art, very bright colors, really thick paper stock. So, and they're not particularly long either. So they're about the size, maybe a little bit longer, maybe like 30 pages instead of 22 pages like comics were back then. So the whole thing, all 3 issues, probably 100 pages or less. I think they were $4.99 at the time for those prestige, which, you know, that was back when a regular comic was $2. So anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Poison Ivy number 37 by writer G. Willow Wilson, art by Ewing Ilhan, colors by Arif Prianto, Hassan Atwan Elhau handling the letters. I continue to be amazed that we're on issue 37 of Poison Ivy, over 3 years of Poison Ivy. This just missed my top 5. I was trying to find a way to make it fit. I just couldn't do it. I almost was going to have it tied at 5 because I really, really enjoyed it. What I'm enjoying most, and I'll try to keep it brief because it's not our top 5 and we still got so many books to cover, but just the fact that we're getting so many different facets of Poison Ivy from G. Willow Wilson. She's not just one thing. I've talked before about why I wasn't a big fan of Poison Ivy in the past. She was a 2-dimensional villain for so long. I wouldn't call her necessarily mustache twirling because she's a woman. Maybe she's twirling her hair instead. But, you know, adding in the complexity, and that started with putting her relationship with Harley Quinn. I don't care if she's in a relationship with Harley Quinn or not. It doesn't make any difference to me, but it was adding another aspect or facet to the character. And that's what G. Willow Wilson continues to do. She's flawed, and the mistakes that she made. I mean, if you recall, Rocky, when you and I were first reviewing this, we were like, is she a villain? Is she not a villain? What are the choices she's making? She felt trapped. It almost seemed like she went down a path of becoming, I'll use the word soft in a way, and very much in touch with her emotions and feelings, and almost like besieged and beset, and very much, like I said, a soft character in dealing with her origins and Jason Woodrue and whatever. And there wasn't kind of that hard edge to her that we've seen in the past. And she almost seemed like a little more heroic in that softness. And now we're swinging back the other way, right? With the circumstances that she's in this issue, she finds out that Janet from HR is the one that betrayed her. That hard edge comes back strong. So I say all that to say this is just great character work, and that is what is really attracting me to this book. And again, credit to G. Willow Wilson. This book was supposed to go for 6 issues, and here we are on issue 37. Yeah. We've seen plenty of books that are great and critically acclaimed get canceled. Green Arrow, most recently, is a fantastic example, which I'll put a link in the show notes on the webpage for LRM online. There is a campaign to try to it's not a GoFundMe, but it's an online petition basically to keep Green Arrow going. So I'll put a link. Everybody, you should go and click to keep that going. But the point being, Green Arrow is fantastic, and its sales didn't keep it going, but Poison Ivy is, and that's a credit. Green Arrow's a much more well-known character than Poison Ivy, and yet Poison Ivy keeps on trucking. So I give the artistic teams that have been on it, including Ewing, he's done previous issues. Obviously, Marcio Takara's done the majority of the issues. And, of course, the scripting and the story and the plotting by G. Willow Wilson. It's been fantastic. And that's a credit to have a character like Poison Ivy get up to 37 issues. That's crazy to me. If this gets up to 50, I mean, we could go down a list of characters that are venerable DC characters that haven't had a series go 50 issues. Cyborg's never had a 50-issue series. Hawkman, one of the very first DC superheroes, has never had a series go 50 issues. And Poison Ivy doesn't show any signs of stopping. I could easily see Poison Ivy getting to 50 issues. That will be crazy. So anyway, anything, it's not your top 5, but anything you want to add quickly?
I like that Dr. Tompkins shows up here. Poison Ivy is she's losing touch with some of her humanity a little bit. She's lost some of that compassion. She's too distracted by too many things, and she doesn't realize what happened to Janet from HR. She finally discovers this issue that Janet basically betrayed her and is a victim of Bog Venus. And there's going to be fallout from that. And Janet and Poison Ivy is very upset with herself, and she realizes she's dropped the ball and she's not paying attention, and her friends are paying the price for it. And she's missed a betrayal, she's missed the sickness of her best friend, and she's not a particularly good leader. So she's kind of a failure on multiple fronts here, and she's not doing a good job of keeping it together. And and that actually makes for good drama and great storytelling. And I'm really looking forward to see how all this resolves, because quite frankly, I love the fact that of all the characters in this story, the one that I'm starting to like the least in a good way is Poison Ivy herself. She's very flawed, and credit to J. Willow Wilson for drawing out those type of character moments so well. And this continues to be a series that justifies why it's an ongoing series.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought we'd be over here teaming up or on Peter Undine's side, going
exactly.
We're agreeing with him as opposed to agreeing with Poison Ivy. In fact, Poison Ivy is such a failure. She also forgot to read the last couple pages of Absolute Wonder Woman, and she didn't know that the Absolute Zatannic made an appearance. So,
Thank you. I don't feel so bad. I'm in the same boat as Poison Ivy. That's awesome.
All right, up next, Birds of Prey number 26. This is another one of the titles, along with Green Arrow, that's coming to an end. Didn't have as much critical acclaim as Green Arrow, but it's obviously been going on longer than Chris Condon's run on Green Arrow. But I at least it seems like Kelly Thompson and her co-creators on this, or her collaborators on this series, are going to get a chance to give us an epic conclusion, because this is still firing on all cylinders, and the strength of it is still in the relationship and the banter between the different members of the Birds of Prey, especially Barda. I've talked before about how much I love the voice that Kelly Thompson gives Barda. So again, issue 26, written by Kelly Thompson. Sami Basri handles the pencils on pages 1 through 15, and then we have Vicente Cifuentes handling the pencils for the last 4 pages, 16 through 20. Those pages are inked by Cifuentes himself. Adriana Lucas colors the whole thing, and then we have Clayton Cowell on letters. Not a whole heck of a lot to talk about in terms of plot, because again, I don't want to get into too much detail because this is not in my top 5. But I'll just say that I'm enjoying it, and as I said before, the strength of this book for me is still in the relationships and the banter between the various Birds of Prey. So this didn't make your top 5 either, Rocky, but anything to add?
I'm glad this series was canceled. Quite frankly, it hasn't lived up to its potential in my view. I don't share your excitement for it. I think it's lost a lot of its momentum, and this is just a prime example as to why. There's a mystery. There's all kinds of clues. I find that this is very disjointed. I find that while the dialogue is crisp and clear between the characters, I don't find there to be interesting character development. This has never really found a footing for me. And Kelly Thompson herself, I think, has tacitly admitted this in an interview where she basically said that DC did offer her, if she really wanted to, they would have allowed her to continue this, probably on the strength of the fact that she's Kelly Thompson of Absolute Wonder Woman fame. But she decided not to, and I think that tells you something right there, that it just wasn't connecting for her too, as much as she loves the characters. And in any event, again, it had its run. I love these characters, and we're going to see more of them in the future. I'm sure Kelly Thompson will come back and do occasional one shot here, and I'm sure. But this just didn't resonate for me, and this was actually came in at number 11 for me, near the bottom of the pack.
Yeah, it is interesting because, I feel like what I wanted from the series, because I as much as I enjoy this, I don't enjoy it as much as I've enjoyed other Kelly Thompson series, and I hate to say, because it's over at Marvel, and this was years ago, because Marvel's not putting out anything that's as high quality as the 2 series I'm about to mention right now. Currently, they just aren't. But Kelly Thompson had a Black Widow run that was not dissimilar from Birds of Prey, because it wasn't just Natasha. It was White Widow and Spider Woman showed up there, and there were other supporting characters as well. And the kind of banter is very similar to what we get here. But to your point, Rocky, that series had a bit of a harder edge to it.
Yeah.
Kind of a little more violence. And it was just, we're not talking leaning over into Punisher territory, but more that direction, right?
Yeah, it was more exciting. I thought it was more exciting. I thought it had more drama myself.
Yeah, exactly. There was just kind of more to it. And that's what I was hoping for with Birds of Prey. Now, Kelly Thompson also had a long critically acclaimed run on Captain Marvel. And it was the same kind of thing. We had, it wasn't as hard edged or leaned to as much violence or action as her Black Widow run, but it was still very, very good with the same kind of emotional beats and banter, what have you. But again, you had Jessica Drew showing up in there. You had her sister, Captain Marvel's sister. I can't remember, Lori or Lara Vel or something like that. You had various other, Phyla Vel showed up there as well. You had other various supporting characters, and so it wasn't to the point of Birds of Prey like a team book or whatever. But again, it had a really good vibe and a really good kind of flow to it. And I think, to your point, Rocky, that's what's missing here. Although we still get the banter and the character interactions, it's kind of the flow that never has felt smooth. It's been kind of fits and starts and the pacing maybe, and it could be various other things, and maybe we don't know what editorial mandates and what kind of things. So yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that she decided that she had a chance to keep it going and decided not to, and she's writing a ton of other books as well, so that might have to do with it also. So anyway, this next book for me, I don't know if I mentioned Birds of Prey, came in at number 12 for me, but this next book came in last, to no one's surprise, because I cannot get into it, and it bugs the crap out of me because it's in Rocky's top 5, probably in his top 3. He loves it. He loves these characters, and I just feel like I'm missing something every time we talk about this. And I read it, and in fact, I read this issue twice because I wanted to like it, but I just think because my emotional investment in these characters is not there, except for Cassandra. But and I've talked about this before in relation to Batgirl. My emotional investment in Cassandra Cain is her as a member of the Bat family, and that this is exploring the other aspects of her, which I just don't really care that much about. So I'm finding it a little tough to find my in to this. So that's why it ranks so low for me. And the fact that this is this is the start of another arc, The War of Shadows Part 1, from writer Tate Brombal, Takeshi Miyazawa on art, Juan Castro inking some of those pages, Mike Spicer on colors, Tom Napolitano on letters. I mean, I wasn't surprised that, we're starting a new arc and we're still not back in Gotham because the story really hasn't ended yet. So it feels like this is where we need to be. And I will give credit to Tate Brombal for, although we're not in Gotham, we are bringing in some very classic Batman myths, like the League of Shadows has been a part of it, or whatever. But we actually see Nisa Al Ghul here, and he's bringing back other characters far, far from the past that have shown up in Batgirl comics in the early 2000s. So, credit where credit is due. Tate Brombal's talked about how he's such a huge fan of Cassandra Cain and he's putting his money where his mouth is. But still, I'm like, I've said this before, I really can't wait for him to finish with this whole Lady Shiva, origins of Lady Shiva, Cassandra Cain as the daughter of Lady Shiva, and put Batgirl back in Gotham City and see what that's going to be like. But maybe that never happens. Maybe the whole point of his story was this, to explore this aspect of Cassandra Cain, and maybe we'll never get back to Gotham with Cassandra Cain. Maybe he'll send her like the Legend of Kung Fu, David Carradine character. He'll send her out after this to help traveling the world or what have you, or maybe it'll just end. Like I have no idea, because it does seem like fans of the martial arts corner of the DCU are really enjoying this. I know I'm in the minority here by ranking this so low. So that being said, I'll shut up and let Rocky talk about why it kicks ass. And I wish I want to like it more than I do.
Hmm.
But again, I have no emotional connection to it, and so it's landing very flat for me. So
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I don't know what the sales are in Batgirl. I mean, look, for all I know, I mean, Scott Snyder has said that he's very diplomatically they're approaching some titles, and we've already got Power Girl canceled. Birds of Prey was canceled. I mean, who knows? Maybe Batgirl's headed for cancellation too. I don't know what the sales are like, and sales do matter. So I just love the martial arts aspect of it. I love Nisa Al Ghul as a character. I've loved her since her introduction in a series called Death in the Maidens that Greg Rucka wrote back in the day. I think she's my favorite daughter of Ra's al Ghul. And I've always loved her, and I like that she shows up here. She, of course, I thought she was dead, killed by Batgirl back in the day. There's even an editorial comment to that respect. I love the fact that, you've heard of Nanda Parbat, which is sort of like a mystical place in the DC universe where Batman's gone and Richard Dragon's gone and the Question is gone, to sort of like they go and they meditate in caves and Nanda Parbat, and martial artists go there. Well, this is San Sura. It's sort of like the Shangri-La, like a hidden city in the Himalayas or whatever, where Nisa Al Ghul is there, where she trains all these the world's greatest martial artists. The villain, the good and the bad, all go there for training and to sort of achieve nirvana and become the best of the best. And Batgirl and Jade Taggart end up traveling there, of course, to basically meet Nisa Al Ghul, because Nisa Al Ghul has a proposal to make to Cassandra, and that's ultimately to find and defeat the Unburied, to avenge the death of her mother, Lady Shiva. And it's, and we meet all these other characters, and, kudos to Tate Brombal, who's got, there's like, I think there's at least 2 or 3 editorial editors boxes here where there's even Aruna. I totally forgot about Aruna. I had to Google her. I know I've got her somewhere, but I forget about Aruna. But all these past characters that played a role are all sort of coming into fray. I mean, this is really what. It's funny, you got guys like Joshua Williamson who does a series like Robin, where he did that tournament on Lazarus Island, and there was a martial arts tournament, and who was the best of the best, and everyone gets excited about that. Well, those are cool martial artists, and that was a very fun series. Now, arguably, this Batgirl probably hasn't been as fun per se as that Lazarus tournament, but there's so much potential here with, martial artists aren't superheroes. They're just ordinary human beings that learn how to fight. And so, to me, there's so much potential here. And that's why I love it. That's why I love about it so much. And I kind of like that Batgirl is building up her own sort of adventures outside of Gotham, because frankly, I think that's where she ought to be. Now, realistically, the fans matter, and at the end of the day, probably most people want Batgirl back in Gotham. I'll concede that. I'm in the you're in the minority maybe on one thing, I'm in minority on the other, but I like the fact that this is at least expanding the social circle, because the more this martial arts circle is expanded, this extended family and all these connections, these new modern day connections are being drawn. Let's face it, every martial artist inevitably ends up in Gotham at some point and ends up fighting Batman or some members of the Bat family. So to me, I just love how this is all coming together, because there's such a rich mythology. It's sort of like DC cosmology. There's so much as yet unexplored, and there's still so much yet unexplored in the not cosmology but the martial arts mythology of the DC universe. And I like that Tate Brombal is doing that, and he's not only doing that, I think he's telling a good story here, and he's respecting the past, and he's incorporating the past. He's not just making all this crap up as he goes along. It actually makes sense, and he's at least trying to draw those connections, and I think doing a reasonably competent job of it. And I'm in it for the ride, and I'm having a lot of fun. So this made my top 5. It didn't make my top 3. It came in right at number 5, actually. I'll spoil that, but I did enjoy it.
yeah, it's interesting because there are certain martial artists that I really enjoy. Like I actually am a fan of Black or Bronze Tiger rather. I also like King Snake, and I couldn't even tell you. I mean, I know he was kind of a nemesis of Tim Drake, Robin.
Yeah.
And I don't know the last time he appeared, if he's even alive, supposed to be alive or dead or whatever. But he's somebody else, obviously. But then there's others like Richard Dragon that I just could not care less about. And in terms of in terms of a battle or fight, best of the best, well, that's Black Canary, according to Tom King. Anyway.
Yeah. Not in my world. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I think not in a lot of people's world. I think again, but I didn't even know she was in the conversation. So anyway, that is a great series, though. Everybody, despite the fact that she does win, but
Yeah.
or actually she loses. She gives up at the end. Not to spoil, but anyway, let's
Yeah.
move on. Up next, we have Absolute Green Lantern #7. Meanwhile, in the Dark, written by Al Ewing, Jason Howard, and Riley Rosmo on art. Anaki Azapazayu on colors. Probably butchered that name. I'm sure it's Inyaki, but the last name is Azpiazu. Azpiazu? Yeah, I don't know. Sorry. Lucas Catoni on letters. I can say that one. Um, until I just read those credits, I didn't realize that this wasn't the regular series artist Jonoy Lindsay that we've had, and I don't know if that has something to do with why I enjoyed this particular issue so much, or maybe it's just that we're starting to get some answers. That being said, when you read this, you just have to kind of dive in and just go with it because you're going to get a lot of terms and a lot of ideas and a lot of concepts that don't make sense and that we're not familiar with, and there's still so much we don't know, which is sort of emblematic of Al Ewing's writing style at times, which I'm not a big fan of. Like there's a balance between being spoon fed and just having all this stuff thrown at you that you have no idea what it is, and you just feel like you're drowning. So in that way, this is issue 7, the first issue of the second arc, and this is not new reader friendly at all. But if you go back and read the first 6 issues of Absolute Green Lantern, guess what? You still won't understand really what's going on in this issue #7.
Thank you. I was going to say, don't tell me you understand what's going on. You'll drive me crazy.
Yeah. So don't feel like if you read this, like I say, it's not new reader friendly. Don't feel like if you go back and you read those first 6 issues, now you're a veteran reader and you're going to understand. Like none of us have been given enough context to really understand what's going on in this world. So I enjoyed the art. It does feel like we have more forward momentum in the story than we've had maybe since issue 2. But that being said, I don't understand the momentum, and that's still a little bit of a problem. We will, I'm making an assumption that we will have it explained to us, but it's never going to be explained to the level of, hey, these are concepts and what have you that have been around for decades and we all understand them, right? Because when it comes to understanding the mythos of Green Lantern and the other spectrums, I think we have a pretty good understanding. But like, think back to how long ago the other spectrums showed up, and then think back to Darkest Night, and think back to how many stories we've had in the ensuing years, which has helped flesh out and explain those concepts. And now I feel like, I have a good understanding of, who the Indigo Lantern Corps is, and who the Violet Lantern Corps is, and the Red Lanterns and the Yellow. But that took time, and this is going to take time as well. The problem is when you start throwing in all these characters and concepts that have the same name, like Kilowog shows up in this issue, and so you feel like you should know more and have a greater understanding of what's going on, as opposed to, let's forget that this is an Absolute title. Let's forget this is a Green Lantern title. Let's change the name and change all the characters, give all the characters different names, and just read this as like this space opera story from Al Ewing. Now, all of a sudden, I think you're a little more willing to accept what's going on and the mysteries of it, and you're not so worried that you don't understand how everything fits together. But because it's familiar between, so many characters show up here. Anissa shows up. Sinestro shows up. Rocky's got him on the screen there. Apparently he's going to be the big bad of Absolute Green Lantern, or one of the big bads. I mentioned Kilowog. Tomar Ray shows up. There's somebody else I can't remember. Was it Medville, maybe? The plant guy that shows up as well?
Yeah, I'm not sure. There's various characters that look familiar to me. But
yeah, it's Medville who is the plant Green Lantern that has the one eye, and his hair looks like kind of like wheat stalks. But anyway, my point being that it's all these familiar characters that show up, and so because they're familiar characters, and because it's Green Lantern, and you understand, all the different Lantern spectrums in the main universe, you sort of have these expectations that you'll understand this too. Give yourself a break. This is all new stuff. Again, like, think if you just changed the name of all of it, if it wasn't an absolute title, if it wasn't a DC title, if it wasn't Lanterns, and it was just something else, is it enjoyable? Do you care enough to keep reading to understand these concepts eventually? That's how you need to approach it.
Yeah.
For me, I was at the point where I was like where it was starting to feel like it was dragging, and it wasn't going anywhere, and I was starting to get a little bit bored. This issue has reignited my excitement for the series in a way, but excited it in that way that I'm talking about, where I'm forgetting it, that it has any, like, completely separate this from anything about Green Lantern or Lanterns or any of the spectrums in the main universe. Forget it all. This is all new stuff that I will understand eventually. That's how I'm taking it. But that being said, this comes in at number 10 for me, because if I'm ranking it among other books, I'm investing time in this for something I will understand eventually. I'm not necessarily willing to invest a lot of time and energy into something that feels a little bit like homework that I'll understand eventually. But it's Al Ewing, and the art's cool, and the color work is good. So I'm still on board with this. Again, I did enjoy it more than a lot of recent issues, but it did come in at number 10 for me. So what are your thoughts on it, Rocky? You kind of agree with what I'm saying about forget everything you knew about Lanterns?
Yeah, but and you very politely and diplomatically turn that into sort of like a very diplomatic critique. But I'm just a little bit more critical. One of the central conceits of the mainstream Green Lantern mythology is that it is so intuitively simple, it draws the reader in. The emotional spectrum makes intuitive sense. Red is rage. Green, you can associate that with willpower. Yellow is fear. Orange is greed. The greatest strength is the concept is such a brilliant concept in the mainstream Green Lantern universe. And then to have absolute Green Lantern be anything but the focus is not really on absolute Green Lantern. Willpower is associated with the black stars or the dark stars, for God's sakes. And the yellow you got yellow anomalies, red anomalies, and Jo Mullein is a Green Lantern anomaly, and she's arguably the most powerful. And then you have all these different characters. They're different spacefaring nations. They're different nations, different races, and yet they all speak with the same esoteric. I mean, where's the universal translator? How can they all sound the same and talk in nonsense? And you're absolutely right, Chase, when you say that, of course, at some point we're going to understand all this and it'll be explained better. And in fairness to Al Ewing, we're only on issue 7. But here's the thing. I wouldn't expect Jeff Johns to explain the emotional spectrum in only 7 issues. So maybe I should cut Al Ewing some slack, but I'm not going to cut him much slack because he shouldn't be dealing with all these concepts. He shouldn't be dealing with all these characters. The title is called Absolute Green Lantern. If you don't want to do a story with Absolute Green Lantern, if you want to tell a story about something else, don't call the comic book Absolute Green Lantern. This doesn't deal with an emotional spectrum. I don't even know what you call this spectrum. Do you call it the Enlightenment spectrum? What do you call it? I'm frustrated, but not in a good way. I'm buying every issue because I'm a completionist and I love the absolute titles. I really, really do. I'm really, really hoping for a payoff. I really am. But there's a number of things I feel compelled. Again, this is a constructive criticism. I don't like the art this issue. Some of the characters look like they were drawn. I think if I didn't know better, I'd think this was The Simpsons in space. I mean, this is just. I don't want to. I hate to use the word subpar, but this art is terrible. The color work is muted. It's boring. I can't believe. Is this what space looks like? Almost like a green tinge or a red tinge. The color work, I just think, is amateurish. It doesn't pop off the page. It really does feel muted. I guess maybe it's supposed to, because I guess in the absolute universe we can't get a lot of great color work. Well, we get it over in the Flash. We get it over in Superman. We get it over in even in Batman. I can't believe that the one place where we're getting terrible color work is in Absolute Green Lantern. and we're dealing with all these colors. If it sounds like I'm being harsh, well, I guess I am. I'm disappointed not only with the story itself, which I can cut some slack on, but artistically, I'm really disappointed in this. And I just really hope that not only does the storytelling pick up at some point, but that I really wish, I think artistically, this has just been a miss for me. And that's just art subjective. I just say that with respect. But this is just, again, I want this to be better, but this is on the bottom of my absolute pile in terms of all the absolute titles right now. That might pick up. That could change. But I don't see it changing in the foreseeable future. But we'll see.
Well, I mean, if anybody thought that, and I don't disagree with you, except I'm not saying this art is great. I'm just saying I enjoy this art better than the Jonah. I'm not a fan of the Jonah Lindsay art. That art is super messy to me. And so this is better, but only marginally. It's still not, where I would like it to be. Like you think about Yvonne, to me, Yvonne Reese is like the quintessential, Green Lantern. Think about like Blackest Night and what have you. So, but we can set that aside because, like you said, art's subjective. At no point, and this is what I was worried about when I heard Al Ewing was coming on Absolute Green Lantern. At no point did I expect this not to be complicated, and it is. We could say it's overly complicated, and we could take it one step further and say it feels like it's unnecessarily overly complicated.
Yeah,
that's what gets back to my point before about. Yeah, it shouldn't feel like I'm doing homework when I'm reading a book, and that I'll understand it eventually. So yeah, we're kind of on the same page there. So I guess we'll see where it goes. But I'm surprised to hear. Well, I mean, I am and I'm not. I stopped buying all the physical copies of all the Absolute titles a long time ago. I'm still getting every issue of Batman, every issue of Superman, and every issue of Wonder Woman. And Martian Manhunter, but I stopped buying Flash and Green Lantern a while back, the physical issues, because I just wasn't enjoying them. And so, yeah, I get the completionist part, but also, having just spent a good 30 hours in the last 7 days, finally getting all my books organized by year, and just, oh my God, so many books, and I thought I had 5 extra long boxes, and I had stacks everywhere, and I thought I had enough long boxes that everything was going to fit. And then to come to find out, I had to go dig out some old long boxes I kept. I had to go get 3 more long boxes from up in the attic and put them together, and then I still had books left over. I have too many goddamn books, so I have to stop. So that's why
I hear you.
I am much more selective with what I purchase now, because I am out of space. But part of why I'm getting everything organized chronologically is once I do. So I have everything organized by year right now. Then I'm going to go back through and organize everything by month. Then when that's done, I'm going to start my CLZ app over and scan everything in. And then anything that I have duplicates of, I'm going to separate out, and I'm either going to sell it or I'll just store it somewhere else to just keep for investment purposes. So I'll be paring down my collection in a lot of ways. So that's my plan. I'll have more space so that I can then buy more stuff. All right. So anyway, let's move on. I don't have a heck of a lot to say about the next book. It's DC's Zatannic Panic #1. This is the Halloween special. It is October 1st. This is another one where we didn't get a credits page, which is annoying. So bear with me. I want to give credit to everybody that has stories in here, but I'm going to have to scroll through. So we kick it off with the Zatanna story written by Lyndon Radchenka. The art is by John McCrae, colors by Mike Spicer, Ariana Mayer on letters. I think the John McCrae art was really, really cool. Next up, we had a Batman story called Ouroboros, which was cool because if you know anything about Ouroboros, that's the snake that goes around in the shape of infinity, and it's eating its own tail, and it just kind of goes around forever. And the story is written by Roberto Recchioni, art by Gigi Cavanago, letters by Steve Wands. The story, you can read it backwards or forward, and it's the same, much like an Ouroboros story, which I thought was really fantastic. I thought they did a great job, and the art was gorgeous, colored by the same artist that did the line work. Thought it was great. Then we had a Plastic Man story, which was fun but a little gruesome. I mean, seems like we're leaning into this idea of Plastic Man as body horror. Anyway, it's written by Daniel Warren Johnson. It very much feels like a Daniel Warren Johnson story. The art is by Riley Rosmo, which it really works. Anaki, here's that name again, as Piazu on colors, Tom Napolitano on letters. Hadn't done any work at all, and now 2 in the same week of me butchering that name. Next up, we had a Warlord story, which I really enjoyed, but maybe it's just because I haven't read any Warlord in quite a while. It's called In Your Eyes. It's written by Alex Galler, illustrated by Daniel Bayless, colored by Matt Herms, lettered by Farron Delgado. After that, we had a demon story, which was really cool. The art on that one I didn't enjoy quite as much because you can tell it's clearly computer colors and art. But it was written by Kevin Scott. Dan Aguillo handled the art and colors. Micah Myers on letters. Then we had a Swamp Thing and Constantine story written by Andrew McLean. He also does the story and the letters. Jordy Belair on colors. That one was only okay for me. It very much felt more like a cartoonist type story, if you know what I mean. If you look at the art, you'll know exactly what I mean. And then there was a Raven story, which again was a little okay. The color worked for me in that one. It just felt muted. I thought with brighter colors it might have worked better. Plus the whole cliche of every time we have a Raven story, Trigon has to show up. But that story and art by Rowan McCall on that one, lettered by Farron Delgado. And then we finish it off with an ambush bug story, which was actually pretty fun. Callie C. Miller is the writer, Megan Hung or Hyung on art, Pat Broso on letters. We don't get enough ambush bug stories, so that might have ended up being my favorite one because it was kind of meta. He ended up traveling back. He's the final story. He ends up traveling back through the other stories and commenting on them, which was kind of cool. So, but I'm not a big Halloween guy. I'm just not. It's not my holiday. And this only came in at number 11 for me. I wasn't a huge fan of it. So anything to add about the issue overall or any stories in particular, Rocky?
This was dead last for me. I just didn't. None of these stories really stood out for me as being particularly memorable. If I had to pick, I liked the Warlord story. It was nice seeing Travis Morgan again. He was given a little bit more justice than Cy Spurrier gave him in The Flash when he sort of guest starred in some unreadable issues of The Flash. I actually really liked the Demon story, which I thought was really good. I liked if it was computer generated, I liked it. I liked the way he sort of played a trick on the demon that was trying to kill him to take the crown of he was sort of like the king of hell or whatever, and the trick that he played in sort of admitting defeat and sort of making sure she ended up with the crown, and then she ended up being the target of other demons. I thought that was really well done. But beyond that, I just find these anthologies to be too, often overpriced and not necessarily the bang for the buck. So, trick or treat, I'll take the trick.
Yeah, man. I mean, I keep going back to the fact we begged for these anthologies for so long. Do some anthologies. Give us some of these characters we never get to see, like Plastic Man, Ambush Bug, Warlord, and then we get them, and now we're complaining. But it's because the quality is just not really there. And when I said anthologies, we were more talking like coming out quarterly with continuing stories with more pages, as opposed to these, like you said, they're not memorable because they're so quick. It's a quick 8-page and done. And these ones being about Halloween, when I don't really care that much about Halloween. But the Zatannic cover, main cover, is pretty hot. I will say that.
Yeah.
All right. Up next, book that's in both of our top 5, I think. Cheetah and Cheshire Rob the Justice League, issue number 3. Greg Rucka, the writer. Gorgeous Nicola Scott art. Annette Kwok on colors. Troy Petrie on letters. Give us your thoughts on this one.
The character work. It was so good. We got to learn more about the character Hazard, who's got the ability to sort of affect. She's got the ability to affect probabilities, and she's really good at creating luck. And this team is Cheetah and Cheshire are going to need a lot of luck because they want to rob the Justice League and they want to rob the power bank. And the power bank is filled with all the superpowers of various members of the Justice League as a fallout of absolute power. In the event that they ever lose their powers again, the Justice League wants to be able to access a power bank to get their powers back. Hence, anybody who can rob the power bank can have all those powers. But how do you rob the Justice League? Well, Cheetah and Cheshire are putting together their team. We learn more about Clarion, the Witch Boy, and his cat Tickle. Clarion seems to have a crush on Aaliyah, who's featherweight. She's sort of like the pink-haired girl who's very, very strong. We were wondering who the character was, and it is apparently a new character. And of course, there's Leon, who is Cheshire's daughter, Roy Harper and Cheshire's daughter. And it's nice. We just saw Leon in the pages of Green Arrow with her father, and then she wears two hats. It's kind of cool for her to be with her father, Roy Harper, and then be with her mother, who's kind of a supervillain. It's kind of interesting here, and I like how this story progresses. There, a lot of great, crisp dialogue, a lot of great character work. This does have sort of an Ocean's 11 sort of feel to it, like they're putting together this team. This was an explanatory issue. Cheetah is sort of like given the lowdown to the team, explaining the background, explaining how complex the Justice League satellite is, explaining the responsibilities. There's multiple double-page spreads, and there's at least 3 double-page spreads, basically going through how complex the Justice League is, how there's always at least 20 members of the Justice League that are on the satellite. It's super busy. There's all kinds of complex codes and processes and interdimensional things that are going on because it's a Justice League satellite. So of course, they wonder how the hell are we going to rob this thing. And they end up robbing Ferris Industries because Ferris Industries is what's supplying the league, and so a lot of it is logistical and an explanatory issue. But at the same time, we do get some character work. We see the pain that Cheetah is going through and being possessed by the cat god Eshkataga. We see Alia and Leon getting to know each other a little bit better around the pool, while Clarion nurtures a crush on Aaliyah. And ultimately, at the end, actually, there's an interesting scene where Cheetah calls Clarion aside and wants to speak with him privately. And then later we see Clarion sort of leave the scene at the end of the issue to approach what appears to be Black Adam, Solomon Grundy, and a couple other villains. To basically, is Clarion appears to be somebody who wants to betray the team, or is this misdirection? I don't know, but it's really interesting. I like how Greg Rucka has sort of built the suspense here, and of course Nicola Scott's art is absolutely fantastic. And I really like the repertoire and the rapport between Leon and Aaliyah, especially as they take the cat Tickle, Clarion's cat, and as they go and they pickpocket Sideways. There's a great scene where Sideways shows up, and he's sort of like Sideways. I always consider him like the DC version of Spider-Man. And he's portrayed as a little bit like a Peter Parker goofball type character, and he's pickpocketed to get his Justice League card. And anyways, this is all set up, but it's the type of setup that's necessary, and it gets us to know the characters in a really good way, and that's why I enjoyed it so much, and that's why it made my top 5. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so you remember when we were talking about Absolute Wonder Woman 12 and Zatannic showing up or whatever? And I said Veronica Cale was walking a double page spread, and she's walking along, and we see this like female alligator or crocodile type character, and I didn't know who it was. Now we see that same character show up here in the main DCU. She's to the left of Black Adam. If you know who this is, please put it down in the comments, because I tried to find out who it was. Maybe a character named Kuka was the only thing I could come up with.
Yeah, I don't know.
She's based on a character from Brazilian folklore, an ancient witch who could take the form of an alligator, and her backstory is tied to Amazonian lore, but I'm not sure because I've never heard of that character before. So anyway, I just thought it was interesting because I didn't know who it was. I mean, it makes sense if it's that Kuka character being tied to Amazonian lore, and it showed up in Absolute Wonder Woman last week, and now she shows up this weekend. I was like, this character's taunting me. I didn't know who it was in Absolute Wonder Woman. Couldn't be 100% sure now showing up again. And it makes sense. I mean, which Clarion is, deals with magic. Black Adam deals with magic as well. We had Solomon Grundy there dealing in magic. And then I think that's, is it Brother Voodoo? Or is that, or is Brother Voodoo the Marvel character. But anyway, the person
Yeah.
in white, he's a voodoo character. I know that. I can't remember, think of his name right now.
Yeah.
But
I can.
yeah. But anyway, the point being that I love heists. We talked about that before. I love Nicola Scott art. I'm a huge fan of Sideways. I too consider him to be kind of like the Spider-Man character. I think, if you look at those books that Dan Didio tried to, the new age of DC that he tried to get off the ground, and it clashed with some other things that Scott Snyder and Jeff Johns were doing, and it never really got off the ground. But when you looked at the conceit of those characters, Damage was Hulk, and Sideways was Spider-Man, and the Terrifics were the Fantastic Four. And that really, it was like the DC version of those characters, and I enjoyed it, and I wish it had lasted longer. And I thought Sideways was a pretty underrated series, so I was glad to see him show up here. So when you add in all these things that I like Sideways, I love Nicola's art, I love heists, and yeah, like Rocky said, bit of a setup issue. Think about that scene in Ocean's 11 where all of them finally gather at Elliot Gould's house, and Matt Damon's character and Danny Ocean, played by George Clooney, they're giving them the rundown. Okay, this is what we have to do. We have to get down the elevator shaft with the lasers and blah, blah, blah. That's kind of what we're getting here. But with Cheshire and Cheetah telling everybody, hey, this is what we're going to have to do. And all these kind of impossible things. And then, yeah, at the end, Clarion, who I really appreciated the characterization for Clarion as kind of normal, like more normal characterization than I've ever seen him. Whenever I've seen Clarion, I haven't been a fan of him because he comes across as this whiny, bratty kid. Seeing him actually have a crush on another girl, it kind of humanized him in a way and made him relatable. So, I really appreciated that. And then Cheetah shows up and, kind of ruins it for him. Who knows if he would have had the courage to, talk to Featherweight or not. But, I appreciated that characterization. And then we go and we see that that Clarion is betraying everybody. He's talking to Black Adam, and if that is Kuka and Solomon Grundy and whomever. And so when I originally saw that, because of my predilection to not like Clarion the Witch Boy, I was like, oh, here we go, Clarion trying to, because he's also a very ambitious character and always has been. So I was like, oh, here we go with Clarion, betraying them or whatever. But then when I went back through and kind of flipped through it later to refresh my memory on what happened, I started thinking that maybe this is not what it necessarily appears to be. Because, like Rocky said, Clarion is called away from what he was planning on doing, spending some time or maybe even asking Featherweight out by Cheetah. And I think this is part of the plan. I think Cheetah's Clarion because they're going to need a distraction. And so, these other magical villains, especially Black Adam, we know how ambitious he is. When he hears about this power bank, he's going to want it for himself. But they're going to take a frontal assault approach, most likely, in which case it's the distraction that I think that Cheshire and Cheetah want to use in order to, sneak in and steal the stuff. And who better to send to Black Adam than Clarion, who I think a lot of people in the DCU know as being, very ambitious and willing to double cross and, only caring about himself. So this might, as sort of ancillary effect of this series, this might actually add some depth and some characterization to Clarion to where maybe he'll be a little bit more of a likable character on the other side of this. We'll have to wait and see. But again, great character work. Is definitely in my top 5. In fact, I think it was in my top 3. Yeah, it was in my top 3. Really, really loved the issue. So, all right. Up next, we have Absolute Superman number 12 from writer Jason Aaron, Rafa Sandoval on art, Ulysses Areola on colors, Becca Carey on letters. Man, there's so much I could say about this issue. This is in my top 3. The art by Rafa Sandoval is absolutely awesome. What I enjoyed most about the particular issue was it exploring the relationship between Soul and Kal-El. I also enjoyed seeing how the people of Smallville have received and embraced Kal-El. That was really great. Plus, we also get a lot of flashbacks to Kal's earliest time on Earth, which provided context for where he was at the beginning of the series in issue 1, why he feels the way that he does, gives a little bit more context for his personality and where he's at right now and his power levels, and just, yeah, really, really fantastic uh, amount of story in this issue. So credit to Jason Aaron for packing a ton of story in these 20 pages. The visuals from Rafa Sandoval, we even get kind of a callback um, to the Fortress of Solitude in a lot of ways in this issue, which I thought was fantastic. But again, as gorgeous as the art is, as much as I love the interactions between Lois and Jimmy, and kind of the people of Smallville having embraced Cal, again, that relationship between Kal-El and Soul is really at the heart of this story, and it's so fantastic. It's almost like a Pinocchio, a Jiminy Cricket, a boy and his conscience in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. Um, and in some ways, it's so interesting because there's such a great juxtaposition, and that's where the character work and this dynamic between this artificial intelligence, which is basically a substitute, a surrogate for Lara and Jor-El. I mean, it was built, the artificial intelligence was built and imbued with the values that it has by Laura, by Cal's mother. Um, but it's not a person, right? And so it's a tragic character in a lot of ways, but so's Cal in
Mm-hmm.
a certain way. He's an
Yeah.
orphan, and at one point, Soul even says, because Cal makes the point, I shouldn't even be near the people. He loses control of his powers. He actually rips the arm off a Peacemaker. He's horrified by what he's done, and he's like, I should just be alone. I shouldn't be around the people, whatever. And Soul's like, no, you're built to be around people. You shouldn't be isolated. And he's like, well, I'm not. I have you. And Soul even says, I'm not a substitute for actual interaction with another living being. So they both have their flaws, and they're both tragic in their own way. And even when you put them together and have them, as kind of take them as one entity, if you will, of you have Cal, you have Soul, maybe together we can think of that as Superman. Even then, it's not a complete person, because they both have their tragedies that they've been through and the scars they're still carrying around from the destruction of Krypton and the things that they've been through. And it's those scars, and I think Jason Aaron exploring how Kal-El and Soul will both overcome those through not just their relationship and relying on each other, but through the supporting cast that Kal-El is building with Lois Lane and with Jimmy Olsen, possibly with Ma Kent. We'll see, but I'm sure other characters later in the story as well. That's going to be the journey. That's going to be the point. That's going to be where Cal kind of transcends his absolute version, if you will, to become more closely recognizable as the Superman we know from the main universe. So in that way, it's not dissimilar from Absolute Green Lantern, right? When we're talking about how complicated that story is, and we just have to give it more time to develop, and we'll get the answers eventually. This is that same. We have to have the same level of patience. Now, we don't have the complicated nature necessarily, or the enigmatic storytelling, or the nonsensical terms that we don't even understand the concepts that are being displayed, because this more closely aligns to the concepts of the traditional Superman myths that we have in the main universe. So we understand that better. Kryptonite and Brainiac and various things. We'll talk about another Superman villain that makes a cameo in a book we're going to talk about in a little bit. So we'll have that coming as well. But I compare it to Green Lantern just in terms of needing to have patience still. Yes, we're much further along. Yes, this is easier to understand. Yes, I'm enjoying this, infinitely more than Green Lantern. But there's still a long way to go. And Jason Aaron, in multiple times when we've had him on the show, has talked about wanting to take his time and have us readers enjoy the journey that he's taking Cal on. And I will say that this version of Ra's al Ghul, that so far has been set up as the main main antagonist for Superman, with his Lazarus Corporation or whatever, he feels more like Vandal Savage to me in a lot of ways. um, the main universe Vandal Savage than he does Ra's al Ghul. And I don't say that as a critique, or I don't say that because I like it. It's simply a statement of fact. How well that'll work, kind of for me, remains to be seen. It might be, I won't know how well it works until we get this absolute version of Vandal Savage, if we ever do. Um, but I felt the same way when I read the character in Absolute Evil, which we'll talk about in a little bit. I was like, man, this feels more like Vandal Savage than Ra's al Ghul, and maybe it's because he's so huge and he's got long hair and giant beard like Vandal Savage does. But regardless, Absolute Superman continues to fire on all cylinders. Without question, my favorite Absolute title. It just keeps getting better and better. So I think this was in your top 5 as well, Rocky. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, this was in my top 3. I thought it's fantastic. I'll touch on some of the themes you already did. Just how Saul is. I mean, you want to talk about AI. Is AI going to take away all our jobs? Is AI going to be the bane of humanity's existence? What's the future hold with AI? I don't know, but isn't it interesting that over in the pages of Power Girl that was canceled, her AI construct that brought her to Earth ultimately became evil and tried to control her and became very almost too smothering, too controlling, and ultimately became evil in almost being to be too possessive. And here we have an AI construct, Saul, essentially, literally raising Superman. We can legitimately say Superman is raised. Kal-El. He doesn't like to be called Superman. He's Kal-El of Krypton. Kal-El was raised by Saul. His formative years, in many ways, at least during his, one could reasonably say from maybe when he was 8 or 9, I'm guessing, to when he was a young adult, was raised by basically an AI simulation, an AI program, and a loving one at that, and one that did indeed protect him. And I just got to give out a shout out to Raphael Sandoval's art. There's a scene here, a full page, where the crystalline structure, it's all red. I love how he sort of, instead of white crystalline structures, it's all red crystalline structures, just like in the Superman movie, but it forms a protective shield around Kal-El whenever he needs to heal. It looks absolutely visually fantastic. I absolutely love it. And, what it says about Kal-El, about, Kal-El realizes and he appreciates the fact that what prevented him from going over the edge, what prevented him from ultimately deciding to use lethal force and deciding not to, was basically Saul. And just the way that his moral code was preserved because of his connection to Saul. And I also love the connection with Lois Lane. He calls her Lois for the first time. That relationship is going to develop. Lois lost her father. It's confirmed here that he's dead. Whether or not he'll stay dead, it's comics. We'll have to wait and see. But Lois Lane was, she probably is still dealing with the death of her father. She probably is not used to being particularly close to people. She wasn't really close to her parents. She's had a dysfunctional relationship with her dad. Don't know much about Lois's mother, but already you see the bond starting to form. You see the similarities and the differences between Cal and Lois, and even Jimmy, who Lois keeps telling to shut up. I love that we saw Smallville here. The inhabitants of Smallville, it's clear that they love Cal. They want to protect him, and that's why. Because all this is happening, we see the struggle that Cal has had while on Earth, and we see what has formed. And we've read the previous 11, we've read all 12 issues up to this point, and we see how much is at stake when, in the final pages, we see Ra's al Ghul, along with his daughter, going to be coming to wipe out Kansas and to basically raise it and destroy it and do whatever you kill everyone. Let's make a point. Let's make Ra's al Ghul is bound and determined to make Kal-El his son, in quotations. And this is really epic. Now, this is the 12th issue. I'm not sure if a new story arc begins. I think this is part 1 of the Battle of Kansas. So this is actually the beginning of a story arc. And anyways, fantastic. I agree with you right now. I got to say, it's been going forth between Absolute Batman and Absolute Superman. Once again, I'm like a yo-yo back and forth, and now Absolute Superman's back on my top Absolute title. Great problem to have.
Yeah, well, I'm going to spoil for next week, everybody. Apologies for doing so, but I
Oh,
want to
oh,
put this I want to put this into context. When I was saying at the top of the episode where I was there was a book that I was like, man, this might be my top book this week, and it's actually next week. It's actually Absolute Batman. I haven't, as you know, Rocky, I haven't really been enjoying Absolute Batman as much lately. But the
yeah,
next issue, Absolute Batman, which is the one that has Catwoman on the cover, issue number 13,
yeah.
it was so good. So in a way, I'm glad. In a way, I'm glad that it's not this week, because I don't know what I would have picked. What I have put at number one, what I picked, which everybody will find out in a little bit. So now it still has its chance to stand on its own to be number one on its own, because it's been a long time. I mean, Absolute Batman has been in double digits for me when I've been ranking it. So um,
Mhm.
yeah, I say all that to say I'm glad that it's swinging back around. But Absolute Superman is still my favorite. So anyway,
Yeah.
speaking of Superman, Adventures of Superman, Book of L Part 2, Second Coming is the next book. Written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, art by Scott Godlewski, colors by Alex Guermis and Matt Herms, letters by Dave Sharp. Um, I'm still enjoying this. Again, like all the mythos that Philip Kennedy Johnson is bringing to Adventures of Superman is fantastic. But based on the strength of the other books this week, this only came in at number 8 for me, only because not a heck of a lot happened. Um, it was more kind of a setup issue, us sort of seeing the way that the future world works that Superman finds himself in, and also finding out the big bad, um, who is this um, almost insect-like version, it looks like, of Brainiac. Apparently, is the big bad. We also get a really really old Jimmy Olsen, who's found some way to keep himself alive in the 1,000 years that Superman has been gone, and he gets to meet up with Superman at the end of the issue. Um, but the other thing that's bringing this down for me a little bit, and it's through no fault of the creative team at all. I mentioned a couple of the books that we're reviewing this week. Um, we didn't have credits pages for them, and I think uh, we had to kind of guess to give people credit where credit's due. But we're also missing the back matter for this. So Philip Kennedy Johnson, we talked about this when we reviewed the first issue. Philip Kennedy Johnson talked about in the back of each of these issues, we're going to get a couple of pages from the Book of L, and we did get that in the press preview copy of the first issue, but we don't have it here. I kept scrolling, and there was no more to scroll. It gets to the end of the page, and that's all there is for the last page. So I was disappointed because I always look forward to that. But anyway, this wasn't in your top 5 either, Rocky. Did you
No.
have anything?
I would just say that this came in at number 9 for me. I just, it's just not something. I just don't care about this story. He's sort of like he ends up in the future, and this has all the it has all the trappings of a Game of Thrones like story in the future. With I it just doesn't feel like Superman to me in the future, with having multiple sons and offspring and a bunch of political machinations and in the way of the future. It just doesn't. There's too much happening in the mainstream DC universe. I just can't get into this. This is definitely not on my pull list. Maybe in the maybe at some point in the future I'll get behind it, but I just don't find I just don't find it all that compelling or interesting to me. An older Jimmy Olsen. I read this and to me it was just all like meh. Yeah, like, I'm sorry, but there's too much excitement going on in the mainstream DC universe right now for me to get behind this. In fairness to Philip Kennedy Johnson, if any writer can get me to change my mind, it's him. He's done that like at least 3 times before. He's one writer that can pull it off. So I'll happily put my foot in my mouth because I'll be reading every issue. It's not bad, but this feels like more of a setup issue. Not much happened, but we'll see moving forward. But it just couldn't compete this week.
Yeah, I really want to know more about those light constructs. Those have me intrigued, and more
Yeah.
about Rowan Kent. And yeah, I like the setup. I'm really excited to see what comes next. But I'm a much bigger Superman fan than you are, so that factors in as well. Okay, up next we have JSA issue number 12, Ragnarok finale. Finally, right? Can we say finally? Finale. We finally get the end of the end of the first arc, if you will, first story. 2 arcs, but all one story from writer Jeff Lemire, art by Diego Orlatugi, colors by Luis Guerrero, letters by Steve Wands. This came in at number 7 for me. I did enjoy it. even if the actual defeat of the unnamed was a little bit ex deus machina, it didn't feel completely unearned because the members of the JSA have to fight the members of the Injustice Society. And that was, those battles were epic. And the art by Diego Orlatugi does a fantastic job of showing that. And that was a lot of fun. It wasn't easy. So this isn't a case where it's sort of magical storytelling where somebody uses magic, snap their fingers, and they find a way to win. It took the whole team. It took Kid Eternity going and meeting with the members of the Justice Society who have passed. We see Al Pratt, we see the Kent Nelson version of Dr. Fate, we see Sandman, we see Rex Tyler, Hourman, we see the original Dr. Midnight, and we see Wildcat, we see Ted Grant. But Ted Grant whispers something to Kid Eternity, who then in turn travels back to the land of the living, if you will, and whispers this stuff to Khalid version of Dr. Fate, and Khalid uses that information, that secret knowledge it's called, to defeat the unnamed. So it's not necessarily a case of we're told but not shown, because we do see, but we don't know how it happens. And maybe it's not important, but it does feel a little bit ex deus machina, just a little bit. It doesn't lean over into it fully like we've seen other stories in the past. But what the issue does do really, really well is just focus on the idea of this is a family. These are characters who really care about each other. We get an epilogue that hints at things to come, with Kid Eternity possibly being a new host for the Spectre, which I don't know how that's going to work, but that's really interesting. So I like what this is sort of foreshadowing for the future. But if I have one critique of what Jeff Lemire has been doing in JSA, you gotta speed it up. This took twice as long as it should have. Yeah. This should have taken 6 issues, not 12. So I'm excited for what comes next. But if it takes another 12 issues to get the story of Kid Eternity and Spectre, that's just too long. It has to go quicker. And again, I don't want to blame all of this on Jeff Lemire, because I've talked before about the artists that we've had on the series use really thick line weights and tend to use bigger panels, which means you can have less panels per page, which means you have less story per issue. But that might be the way Jeff Lemire is setting it up. I don't know. I haven't seen the scripts. So regardless, if it's narratively or if it's visually, the pacing has to pick up. But ultimately, I did enjoy these first 12 issues. I enjoyed the story, even if it took too long to all unfold. So not in your top 5 either, Rocky, but what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, no, came in at number 8 for me. Upon reflection, I could probably have put it second last. I could have moved it lower. I was just disappointed all around. Next issue is going to be JSA Year 1, so we're going to be going backwards again. There was never a point of this series where I felt that invested in the story. I thought it was a little bit all over the place. And I don't know what it is, but it just really never resonated. And it's funny, like the art just, I guess it kind of reminded me of the All-Star Squadron, and that's what's kind of kept me pulling it in. It's on my pull list. I've got all 12 issues, but I'm going to be dropping it off my pull list now. Unlike you, while Kid Eternity being the Spectre maybe is kind of interesting, having the soul, having the spirit of vengeance being in Kid Eternity, being in the mind of a child. Well, that's kind of intriguing. It's just not intriguing enough. And we're gonna get a rehash at JSA Year 1. What is that? How many JSA Year 1s have we had in the last 20 years? I don't know. As a longtime JSA reader, that just doesn't interest me. Well, maybe I'll change my mind. We review them every year. We review them every week. So we'll see. But this was not something I would pick up 2 trades for, and I couldn't recommend this to somebody, because I just find this to be a little bit too convoluted and not particularly exciting. It didn't feel like there was enough gravitas there in the storyline or the plot line at any point, nor a lot of significant character development, quite frankly. Was just disappointing all around.
All right, fair enough. All right, up next we have Absolute Evil #1. Last book we're going to talk about in detail. So it's interesting, right? Like the book is titled Absolute Evil, and it's a one shot, and we're bringing together. Well, let me give the credits first. So it's written by Al Ewing, art by Giuseppe Camuncoli and Stefano Nisi, colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr., letters by Tom Napolitano. The book is called Absolute Evil, but the title of the issue is Absolute Justice. And they're meeting, you see it in the absolute final image of the book. They're meeting in a place that looks like the Hall of Justice, the absolute universe version of it. And when I say they're meeting, this is the villains, the antagonists, whatever you want to call them. To them, to themselves, they're heroes, but we know them to be the villains of of the story so far. So we're talking about the Joker, even though we've seen very little of him. We're talking about Eleanor Thawne from Flash. We're talking about Victoria Kale from Absolute Wonder Woman. We're talking about Hector Hammond from Absolute Green Lantern, and then their minions, if you will. We have Hawkman shows up for the first time, and I love when he shows up because he shows up with kind of the hooded version of Hawkman when he shows up for the first time. But early on, and we were told this was teased at San Diego Comic-Con, but Pornsak Pichot was going to be writing an Absolute Green Arrow book, and this issue actually starts off with Green Arrow and Oliver Queen talk about how he wants to make a difference, and he's training with his arrow, and he's on the phone with Roy Harper or whatever. And huge spoilers here, he doesn't survive the issue. So maybe that's why we haven't seen any preview art for Absolute Green Arrow. We haven't had any information. Oliver Queen is not Absolute Green Arrow. My guess is it's going to be Roy Harper, because Hawkman, he's thrown in with these villains from way back. Because the other thing this issue does is it shows from going back to the earliest time when we would have, in the main universe, had these heroes start to show up and start building that legacy of heroes with the Justice Society and the Justice League or what have you. No, they go to Hawkman and they convince Hawkman to turn on his fellow heroes, to be the Rat. And he's still working for them. And he kills Green Arrow and walks into the room where these other characters are having their meeting and dumps Oliver Queen's dead body on the table. We hear other stories of Ted Grant taking a bribe and not following along his fate or what have you, his same path he took in the main DCU. We hear about Sandman being killed, his research being stolen by the army, and him being killed. So, again, this is Absolute Universe is a universe that was created with Omega energy, with dark side energy, with dark energy. And so, the path, the fate, the, reality, the lifetimes, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to label it, of these heroes, it did not play out the way it played out in the DC universe. It played it out in a much darker way, with them either not becoming heroes, with them becoming villains, or with them being killed. And so when you think about it, if that's what this universe is, if this universe is dark, if this universe praises dark side, if it worships evil or what have you, then what we're talking about here is this group of people that are agreeing to come together. That they're not all on board because they don't feel it's necessary, but others of them are pointing out, well, the reason it hasn't been necessary is because we have worked together in the past. But the point being that if this is a backwards world, you can almost think about it like Earth 3, right, in the main universe with the crime syndicate. In a world where being bad is good, then this isn't absolute evil. This is absolute justice. This is what we're being told. This is the formation of the Justice League. This is the Justice League of the Absolute Universe. It's these characters. The Absolute Universe Justice League is not comprised of heroes. It's comprised of villains. So in that way, it is similar to Earth 3 with the crime syndicate, except they don't call themselves, the Injustice League or the Legion of Doom. They call themselves the Justice League because in this world, what they're doing, the values that they're upholding and that they believe in, that's seen as good. That's seen as the way to be. Right? They are the heroes. They that whole cliche, villains are the heroes of their own story. these villains are the heroes of their whole universe's story because it is the dark side universe. It is the absolute universe. So I find that to be fascinating. Um, I also like that there are, again, multiples that Hector Hammond doesn't want to work together. Um, Ra's al Ghul doesn't necessarily want to work together, but it ends up being the Joker that kind of convinces them that they should be working together. It was not necessarily unheard of or unexpected that Hawkman shows up with Green Arrow's body and dumps it on the table. That is one of the other things that the Justice League or the Absolute Universe is doing a good job of. Like, you don't know who's safe, you don't know who's going to make it, or not. And it does give the creators a little bit more freedom. So this is an important. If you're reading the Absolute Universe, this is an important issue to pick up. It's especially important to pay attention to the Joker at the end when he talks about the fundamental forces of the Absolute Universe and how they trend in one direction, and talks about the Omega particles, which we know to be imbued with dark side energy and what have you. So it's going to be interesting to see how these characters get along. We did see Scott Snyder tease the image of the Joker. I wasn't a big fan of it, to be honest. So much body horror, it's a little much for me. But how that might play in, we'll have to wait and see. But I really like this. This was a big swing. Unlike Al Ewing's Green Lantern, although this is complicated, I feel like it's not anywhere near as complicated as Green Lantern. The concepts are much easier to grasp, and it just makes a lot more sense because we already have context for a lot of these characters, as opposed to in his Green Lantern book, especially this issue we reviewed this week, where all these characters show up and we don't have any context for any of those characters. All these characters have shown up in books before. Now, we haven't had much context for the Joker. This is actually the most we see the Joker ever talk. We didn't see him say much when he showed up in the two previous issues of Absolute Batman, issue 1, and then I think issue 11 he showed up. So we get more of him. He's fleshing himself out. But we've had a ton of Hector Hammond. We've seen Eleanor Thrawn. We've seen Veronica Cale. We've seen plenty of Hector Hammond and Green Lantern. So, yeah, this is interesting, and it really great. And again, I think DC didn't want to spoil. We didn't get this until the last minute on Friday, like late Friday afternoon. They finally put it in the box because I think they were worried about the Green Arrow thing being spoiled, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
But the fact that the issue was titled Absolute Justice, and this is one time I didn't mind having the credits be all the way at the end on the last page, because it really does hit home when you see that image of the Hall of Justice and you realize, oh, these villains that are meeting up are meeting in the Hall of Justice because they're the Justice League of the Absolute Universe. So very well done. What are your thoughts on it?
Oh yeah, this very much reminds me of like it's sort of it's a more sophisticated, nuanced take of Earth 3, but in a more fascinating and interesting way. It actually reminds me a little bit of the latest issue of the latest show of Peacemaker, where Peacemaker ends up on Earth X and you just don't realize how similar, how very subtle changes can take place around you, and you don't even realize. And the Peacemaker character in this episode didn't realize he was surrounded by living in an Axis society. And here, the fact that, instead of the Higgs boson particle, you have an Omega particle, and you have, this is a world where justice, it's not natural for justice to prevail. There's a spiritual dimension. The Joker explains there's a spiritual dimension. There's a moral dimension that grounds the absolute universe. And they discovered it in the Omega particle. And that's how come all the heroes going back to the beginning were even the people that appeared heroic, like Hawkman back in 1951 at the beginning. He was easy, and he was he betrayed his allies. He betrayed his friends. Wildcat, Ted Grant of the Absolute Universe, accepted a bribe, $150,000, accepted a bribe to stop doing what he was doing. And Batman, of course, in the future, he stands out because Absolute Batman never took the money. As the Joker said, he never took the money. And as Kale said, calls it the gateway event. When Absolute Wonder Woman shows up, what the hell was the military doing, taking orders from Wonder Woman? What's going on? These are like massive influxes. These are disruptions in the status quo world order, or the universal order that's going against the spiritual omega dimension of the absolute universe. And so they consider this a threat. And it goes against the justice of the omega universe. The justice of the absolute universe is that justice follows a certain immoral code of conduct. And Absolute Batman and Absolute Superman and Wonder Woman and Martian Manhunter and Flash, they're violating that code, and so they're threats. And so you can see and appreciate these powerful elites, of Hector Hammond, Kale, Thawne, Joker, Ra's al Ghul, while they realize, you know what? Hey, let's go together and battle this. Let's be prepared. We can react so much faster together. We're very, very powerful in our own right, but we all have our egos. We're all narcissists. I guess we all love our own power. And, but at the same time, we have to be cognizant of the threat. I love the fact how, this is such a brilliant issue. I made my top 3 easily. It's a brilliant issue because these are what we would call supervillains, but they're actually brilliant. They're anticipating the threat they see the threat of the heroes far more in advance than the heroes see in them. They are way ahead of them. And that's what I love about this. This absolute universe really is badass in every sense of the word. And it's literally built into the very particles that make up the universe itself. And it's awesome. It's awesome. And now more than ever, we knew before, but now we know more than ever that in order for the absolute trinity to overcome this, the absolute Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, etc., Martian Manhunter, for them to overcome this team in this universe, oh boy, they got their work cut out for them. Fantastic issue.
Yeah, that's what's so interesting about this. We know DCKO event is coming, and they might be able to defeat Darkseid, but that doesn't mean the end of the absolute universe. I mean, we can look at it one of two ways. Okay, well, maybe it'll make for a better story if they defeat Darkseid, and then it crumbles away. But the absolute universe, that is, crumbles away because Darkseid is no longer there to anchor it or what have you. But it's like, in a way, I don't want it to go away because I like this version of Superman. I mean, I like the main universe version of Superman as well, but I like the different take on it or what have you. But then you look at it just from a practical standpoint, right? Like these absolute books, we've seen, I think we're up to reprint 10 of Absolute Batman 1 or something like that. Like, people are still finding it. There's still a demand. Shops are still ordering. So my point being that DC's making so much money, and these comic shops are making so much money. They're not about to end the absolute universe because it's too, even if they originally had planned for it to only last X amount of time, because it makes sense narratively, from a business standpoint, I just don't see them ending it. Same reason I don't see them ending the Ultimate line over at Marvel, because it's the best-selling books over at Marvel right now are in the Ultimate line. But Jonathan Hickman signed a contract that said he was only going to do it for X amount of years. And, they have the incursion event that's supposed to be the end of that universe. And the rumor that Bendis is coming back to Marvel, I think they're going to end the current Ultimate Universe and just start up another one. Because, again, it's making too much money from a business standpoint for them to just, move along. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if the creators behind the Absolute Universe, Scott Snyder and Joshua Williamson and Mark Waid and everybody else that's working on books there, if they've gotten together and said, okay, well, we had this ending in mind that some of the other creators that are playing in the universe, Kelly Thompson and Al Ewing and Pornsak Peter Show, Jeff Lemire on Absolute Flash, whatever, who knows what they knew and what they didn't necessarily know. But who knows what they're pivoting. You know, if they were planning on ending it, maybe they're going to pivot. Maybe they'll keep it going in a different way. I mean, who knows? All I know is the Ultimate line over at Marvel, Absolute line at DC are selling really, really well, and they're not going to go away anytime soon if they're continuing to make money. Eventually, you get diminishing returns. I mean, the Ultimate line, the original Ultimate line at Marvel didn't, last forever. It eventually, but the mistakes were made, and maybe they diluted it too much or whatever. But again, this stuff's selling too well and it's too exciting, so I don't expect it to go away.
By the way, I don't want to make the mistake I did with the Zatannic. After the credits, there is an appearance of another Absolute character, and that's Absolute Lex. He does show up. So is Absolute Lex, is he going to be an ally of the Absolute Justice League / bad guys, or is he going to be something else? So that's interesting too. And another reason why this ended fantastically is just a great issue overall.
Yeah, because we do find out that Brainiac was watching this entire meeting through the glasses that Ra's al Ghul was wearing. And apparently these glasses were built by the Mirror Master. So that's another first appearance we get in this Absolute Evil issue. We get the first appearance of the Absolute version of the Mirror Master. And he and Brainiac are talking, and Brainiac's talking about how much they can trust, each other, and how this, and this is the first time we hear them called the Justice League. Brainiac says, I think for the Justice League to be complete, it needs one more member. And then we immediately move over to Lex Luthor, who's sitting on the porch with his wife, apparently. And it looks like she could be like Lana Lang, and it looks like they're out in farmland. So I'm wondering if they're not in Smallville. And also in the background, why does that cloud look like it's the void in the cloud? If you go to the next page, the void in the cloud behind Lex Luthor looks like a bust person, looks like a head of somebody.
Well, an Omega symbol, doesn't it? Isn't that the Omega symbol?
Oh,
kind of.
Also, yeah, it could be an Omega symbol as well. Yeah, but it looks like, that definitely looks like a nose and a mouth and a whatever. So anyway, yeah. So they're showing up as well. We'll see how that all plays out. But yeah, this Absolute universe is not going anywhere. Absolute Justice League is a bunch of bad guys. Interesting. Which I guess plays into what Scott Snyder has talked about with evil basically being the establishment, the system, if you will, in this particular world. So anyways, that does it for the books we're going to talk about in detail. As I mentioned, I think Rocky mentioned before, there is an issue of Teen Titans Go, issue number 8, out this week as well. And then we have a facsimile of Detective Comics number 40 that has, as usual with these facsimiles, they do a blank variant, they do a foil variant, and it's the origin of the original Two-Face that shows up in that issue. As far as collected editions this week, we got a couple of them. We have Blue Beetle, Jaime Reyes, Book 3. This is collecting Blue Beetle, the 2006 series, issues 26 through 36, as well as Booster Gold, issues 21 through 29. We also have The Brave and the Bold, Volume 3, Demons and Dragons. This is collecting the Brave and the Bold series from the 90s, issues 13 through 16, along with Tales from the Brave and the Bold, the first volume, number 181, and The Flash, Volume 2, the Barry Allen, the Wally West Flash, issues number 107 and Impulse number 17. So again, that's all 90s stuff. And then we have we have one new young reader book, Nubia Too Real, which is by L.L. McKinney. This is a follow-up to her first Nubia book that was for young readers. And then finally, we have Two-Face, Trial Separation trade paperback that collects the whole Two-Face series. That's the one by Christian Ward that we reviewed when each issue came out that we really, really enjoyed. So those are your collected editions that are out this week. Time to give our final rankings. I think Rocky went first last week, so I'll dive right in. Starting with number 13, Batgirl number 12. At number 12, I had Birds of Prey number 26. Coming in at number 11, I have the Halloween anthology DC's Zatannic Panic. At number 10, Absolute Green Lantern I have number 1, but that's not right. Absolute Green Lantern issue number, where is it? Oh, I'm in the wrong week. What number? Absolute Green Lantern number 7?
Absolute Green Lantern number 7. That's this week. What do you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I have Absolute Green Lantern 1. I know it wasn't issue number 1.
Yeah, no, it's number 7. Yeah.
Yeah, Absolute Green Lantern number 7. I have coming in at number 10. At number 9, I have Gotham Academy First Year number 1. And again, that might just be because I've never read any of the Gotham Academy before. At number 8, I have Absolute Superman Book of L number 2. At number 7, I have JSA number 12. At number 6, just missing out of my top 5. I really wish I had room for it in my top 5. Poison Ivy number 37. Then at number 5, I have Absolute Evil number 1. Coming in at number 4, Justice League, the Omega Act Special number 1. And part of the reason that ranks so highly for me is just because of the importance of it. Like in terms of the art and the story, I probably would have dropped it out of my top 5. But again, because it leads into DCKO and because it's so important to the event and because they do such a great job of recapping everything that's happened so far for readers that haven't necessarily been keeping up, the importance of it brought it into the top 5 at number 4 for me. And then at number 3, I have Batman number 2. At number 2, I have Cheetah and Cheshire Rob the Justice League, issue number 3. And then number 1, probably to nobody's surprise, once again, Absolute Superman, top of my list. Absolute Superman number 12. I think Absolute Superman has probably been my most picked book of the week. My series that has had book of the week the most. Either that or Green Lantern from Jeremy Adams. I feel like I'm picking all the time. So anyway, give us your rundown, Rocky. What are your rankings?
Coming in at number 13 was DC's Zatannic Panic. Coming in at number 12, Absolute Green Lantern number 7. Number 11, Birds of Prey 26. Number 10, Gotham Academy 1. Number 9, Adventures of Superman Book of L, issue 2. Number 8, JSA number 12. Number 7, Batman issue 2. 6, just missing my top 5, was Poison Ivy 37. Well, I agree with you on that. It's pretty good, but I had to put my at number 5, my Batgirl number 12. I love Batgirl. Number 4, Cheetah and Cheshire number 3. Coming in at rank number 3, Justice League, the Omega Act Special number 1. Coming in at number 2, Absolute Superman number 12. And coming in at number 1, I had to go with Absolute Evil because at the end of the day, I thought it was epic. I just thought it was such a good setup. I thought it bodes well. It really does bode well for the Absolute universe. It's just a great corollary. It's the thematic sort of evolution and confirmation of what Scott Snyder has said and others have said in multiple interviews in terms of what this Absolute universe is about. And it's such a great, great setup for more to come. And it just continues to build my excitement for DC moving into October and into the new year.
All right. Fantastic. There you go. Those are our picks, everybody. Don't forget, if you're watching us on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell so you know when new content comes out. Also, as long as you're here, Comic Space Boom ! Is where this channel can be found. That's Rocky's channel on YouTube. Don't forget to head over to the Comic Source on YouTube as well. That's where all the rest of the content comes out. Again, like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell so you know when new content comes out. If you've stumbled across us on YouTube and like what we do, you can also subscribe to the Comic Source podcast. All the DC Spotlights come out audio only on the podcast, as well as all the other Comic Source content coming out on that podcast feed. Plus, you have access to thousands and thousands of past episodes that we've put out since 2014. So just go to whatever your favorite podcasting app or platform is, do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. Also, if you're checking us out on YouTube, you can scan this QR code, donate $1 or $2 or more if you want to my fund to try to get to New York Comic Con so I can cover everything at the show. Again, I just had a budget for it, and I had a car repair that cost over $3,000. That pretty much blew my budget out of the water. So trying to still make it there. Appreciate any donations anybody wants to make. So that's going to do it for this episode. We really appreciate the support, everybody, as always. And we will talk to you next time.
Catch you later.